Good evening and welcome to the City of Wilmington City Council. Today is Thursday, October 15th, 2020. This is the public comment portion of our meeting. We have four individuals who signed up to give public comments this evening. I'd just like to remind our public that you have 3 minutes to share your comments to the members of council and the public that are online with us, and that we ask that you keep it relevant to items on the agenda or city business. We do not use this as a time for advertisement of any event. We have other venues and methods by which to do so. So with that, I would like to begin with Mr. Dale Thomas from the 7th District, who has offered to give comments this evening. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, President Shabazz, and thank you everybody on the council. Yeah, just real quick, just a few quick comments on some of the things being discussed tonight. First, item 4862, ordinance 20-046 on the body cameras. This is good, I think, overall. Generally speaking, I don't like to see money spent like this. However, you know, if I were on council, which I am running, so I would vote for something like this because I think it's something that will help the police and help the community with trust and helping to build trust, you know, amongst our police force and our citizens. Now, just a reminder that this will cost us $32,580.60 for the next 60 months. That is a lot of money. You know, I just want to keep in mind that we shouldn't spend like this all the time. However, this is one of those rare cases where I think this will be a very helpful thing. Hopefully we can find some other avenues other than tax dollars to pay for these sorts of things. Second, I wanted to make a comment on revision 4 of item 4654, substitute number 3 to ordinance number 19-026 in regards to changing chapters 4 and 34 of the city code to provide for civil fines for owners. Generally speaking, I think this is a good idea. You know, we shouldn't try to make criminals out of things that aren't that criminal. Though I hope that the city and those enforcing these laws won't use this to try and increase revenues, but only use this to encourage those people who are breaking city code to you know, fix their properties or use them in a suitable manner. So thank you for that. And finally, I'd like to comment on item 4871 and 1,000 apologies to Councilwoman Dixon. This is one of the times I disagree. I don't think that we should look to take money from the federal government. I think that ties us to them and indebts us to them, and that's not a good thing. I understand that we need the money. I know that the virus has been particularly harmful to us here in Wilmington, but I would say to everyone on the council, please consider not voting for this because we really don't want to take federal money and try and support ourselves. So I've got about 10 seconds left. Thank you all very much and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Our next speaker for the evening is Devin Hall from the 3rd District.
Good evening. Good evening. This is D. Marquis Hall. I am also a candidate for 3rd District. I declared write-in, and we're going to do the best that we can with this election, November 3rd. We need everyone to write my name on the ballot since we lost the primary. We won 41% of the vote, but
Mr. Hall, this is city business and not campaigning conversation, public comment, sir.
So tonight, a lot of people didn't know that 5:45 they had to be on the Zoom. I'm going to do everything that it is that I can to make people aware that for city council meetings, you have to get on at 5:30 before 5:45. You have to make sure that your name is in the chat so that you might be able to speak during the public comment. It's kind of misleading when you go to the city council website and you read that 6:30 the meeting starts. So there's certain people that might want to say something and they won't be able to because of that problem. So that's something that needs to be addressed because the public's voice needs to be heard. The community needs to be able to share what it is that they know, what it is that a lot of times council members don't. And I wanted to get on tonight, not to endorse myself, not to promote my campaign, not the campaign, but to give recognition to my pastor, who's actually being recognized tonight by the council. Our church, 207 years, Pastor Livingston, the last 20 something years, 22 years, I think it is, he's been a shining light in Wilmington, and he's been a great influence in my life. If it wasn't for Pastor Livingston and the Livingston family and Mother African Church, I wouldn't be civically engaged. I wouldn't be aware of what happens in our community. I wouldn't care too much about holding you guys accountable. I wouldn't care about justice. I wouldn't care about accountability. But because of my church, because of my pastor, because I know that service is of utmost importance, and you, because of what it is that I've been through in my life and what I know about the struggles that people have gone
30
through
seconds, sir.
and what it is to be a Wilmingtonian here, I wouldn't know about the old East Side. I wouldn't know about Howard. I wouldn't know about the Knotty Pond. I wouldn't know about urban renewal or urban removal, as Pastor Livingston calls it. I wouldn't know about
10 seconds,
what it
sir.
is that we can be. And the East Side will rise again, and the North Side will rise again. I thank God for this church, this family, and I thank God for my pastor. And you all
Time.
have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Our next, um, wait a minute. Our next speaker is Ms. Sinead Darby from the Second District.
Good evening, Council President.
Good evening.
Yes, and council members. My name is Sinead Darby. I live in the Second District. I am the candidate elect actually for the Second District, and my public comment is in regards to the blight legislation. I'm really concerned that a vote is going to be made and there's not a full council. The blight legislation is going to have a major impact on the Second District, and there are still things that need to be worked out within the blight legislation. Looking at the $250 weekly fine from chip paint all the way to major repairs that need to be done, like just other little things that need to be amended or changed within that blight bill so it's not problematic to our community. But one of the major things is just that why are we rushing to vote on something when there's a new council coming in January? I don't want to have to clean up y'all mess for a legislation that was passed that had nothing to do with our council. So I think this legislation should be put on hold. I think the new council should be able to talk this out and work together to find a compromise, to be able to have a legislation that's actually going to be impactful in a positive way in our community and not actually hurt people, and that we'll have a full council and Second District will be represented in that vote. And that is my comment for tonight.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Ms. Christina Kelly from outside of the city of Wilmington. Welcome to City of Wilmington, Ms. Kelly.
So my comments very similar in substance to Sinead's. I am very concerned. I'm very concerned that that this council finds that rushing a vote on this bill is a priority in a time like this. I'm very concerned about the integrity of a council that brings such major legislation to vote without a full board present. knowing that a large population of of the city is not going to be represented in this vote. I am very concerned that the insanely high homeless population of 8% of our residents is going to grow substantially due to the lack of legislation, the lack of terminology in this legislation, preventing landlords from passing these fines down to their tenants. We already know that that's going to be happening. The landlords have already disclosed this. Lastly, I am concerned that many areas of this bill directly oppose our state's landlord tenant code, and that this council would even consider voting on legislation that is, again, directly in opposition of our state's legislation. And that's my thoughts on that bill. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. But that concludes our public comments for this evening. We will resume with the business agenda of City Council promptly at 6:30. Thank you very much for tuning in.
No, you're getting
Good evening and welcome to the business meeting of the City of Wilmington City Council. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We will have the opening prayer by Ms. Andrea Queen.
In humility, gratitude, and great joy, we open our hearts, our eyes, our ears, our minds, as we meet to serve our city with the intent on doing good work, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognize our responsibilities to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. May our efforts be blessed with insight, guided by understanding and wisdom. As trusted servants, we seek guidance on our deliberations, and on our efforts, may we act wisely and well and strive to reach our higher potential.
At this time, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
of the
The United States of America,
and
and to
to
the
the
republic
which it
for which
stands,
it stands,
one nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
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 liberty and
with
justice for
liberty
all.
and justice for all.
The clerk will call the roll.
Councilwoman Gray.
Here.
Councilwoman Oliver.
Present.
Councilwoman Harley.
Present.
Councilman Turner.
Here.
Councilwoman McCoy.
Here,
Councilman Johnson.
Here.
Councilman FREEL.
here,
Councilman Adams.
Here.
Councilwoman Dixon.
Present.
Councilman Guy.
Present.
Councilwoman Walsh.
Here,
President Shabazz.
Present.
12 present.
Reading of the minutes of the previous meeting.
October 1st, 2020, City Council met in virtual regular session on the above date at 6:30 p.m. President Hanifa Shabazz presiding. The opening prayer was done by Andrea Queen, Deputy Clerk. The
I move
pledge
the
of-
minutes be accepted as written.
second,
It's been properly moved and second. The minutes be accepted as written. On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
aye,
Any opposed? Motion carried. Committee reports?
October 5th, 2020, President, members of Council, City of Wilmington, ladies and gentlemen. We, your Finance and Economic Development Committee, by virtual meeting tool was referred substitute number 3 to ordinance number 19026 as amended entitled, an ordinance to amend chapters 4 and 34 of the City Code to provide for civil fines for owners of rental properties and vacant properties and increase vacant registration fees. I've given this substitute ordinance careful study and recommend council vote on it accordingly. Respectfully submitted, those members present: Councilman FREEL, Councilman Adams, Councilwoman Gray, Councilman Johnson, Councilwoman Oliver, Councilwoman Walsh, and President Shabazz.
Move the committee report be received, recorded, and filed, and adopted by yea, nay vote.
second,
It's been properly moved and second. The report be received, recorded, and filed. On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
aye,
aye,
Any opposed? Motion carried.
October 5th, 2020, ladies and gentlemen, we, your Finance and Economic Development Committee, by virtual meeting to was referred ordinance number 20046 entitled, an ordinance to authorize and approve a contract between the City of Wilmington and Axon Enterprise, Inc. for body camera related services. I've given this a careful study and recommend council vote on it accordingly. Respectfully submitted, those members present: Councilman FREEL, Councilman Adams, Councilwoman Gray, Councilman Johnson, Councilwoman Oliver, Councilwoman Walsh, and President Shabazz.
I move that committee report be received, recorded, and filed, and adopted by yea, nay vote.
second,
It's been properly moved and second. The report be received, recorded, and filed. On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
aye,
Any opposed? Motion carried. City Treasurer's report?
October 15, 2020, total investment $379,908,728.47. Total cash on hand, $11,836,181.23. Grand total, $391,744,909.70. Felder Jones Potter, City Treasurer.
Move the treasurer's report be received, recorded, filed, adopted by yea, nay vote.
second,
It's been probably moved and second report be received, court and filed on the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Accept a motion to move to accept all non-legislative business.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second to accept all non-legislative business. On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. We have several sympathy resolutions that were presented to members of our community. We have several non-legislative resolutions for recognition. One was recognition of Reverend Lawrence Livingston that'll be presented at the event that's being held for him later in the month. There also was one in recognition of the World Mental Health Day. And we also have one that is recognizing WDAS 70th anniversary. And I'd like to take the privilege, I believe we have a representative from WDAS here to be acknowledged on that recognition. Councilwoman Oliver, were you prepared to present that resolution to?
Yes, Madam President,
Please.
thank you. Sponsors are all City Council, whereas the City of Wilmington City Council recognized the impact that the urban adult contemporary radio has on the lives of the mostly African-American citizens of the City of Wilmington. There are below WDAS utmost praise and congratulations as the station celebrates its 70 years of service to the Philadelphia region, which includes Newcastle County, Delaware, and whereas under the ownership of iHeartMedia, WDAS is widely regarded as one of the original radio stations in the urban adult contemporary format, which mixes R&B oldies with non-rap contemporary R&B and now found in many major markets across the United States. Whereas WDAS came on the air in August 1959 as a rock and classic music format, then later which featured on Sundays. Since that time, musical formatting have arrived in many generations, and the station is widely considered the pioneer in the format of passing leadership from generation to generation, especially within the African-American community. And whereas in March 1971, Steve Leon, owner Max Leon's son and group empowered the direct change of the radio station, launching the station's new urban contemporary format. The station playlist included R&B, soul, funk plan, which would include classics and generic, launching careers nationally artists like Lou Ross, Philadelphia Soul, acts such as the OJs, the Stylistics, Patti LaBelle, the Blue Bells, and Teddy Pendergrass. WDAS FM raised its success, her red hot popularity and new R&B sound developed in the Philadelphia International Records. By 1975, as Philadelphia sound laid the musical groundbreaking disco, the station had become ignited so many radio stations into this playlist. It had raised so much popularity. By the end of the decade, WDAS introduced its historical leadership by introducing Philadelphia to a new sound of rap, which artists such as Sugar Hill Gang, Grandmaster Flash, The Furious Five, Curtis Blow, as well as the showcasing local talents, Frankie Smith, Double Dutch Band. By 1980, WDAS FM was the #1 station in Philadelphia. Whereas in 1976, WDAS had sponsored Unity Day and that annual summer gathering in the Benjamin Franklin Parkway that ended with the passing of our Butterball Tamboro. In addition, Butterball legacy personalities such as the late Georgie Woods, Cutmaster Butter, Mimi Brown, Patty Jackson, Doug Henderson, Laura Bailey, Gary Shepard, Jerry Wells, Doc B, and OP Productions, and many more have made their mark on how the city of Wilmington hears experienced African-American music stories, which WDAS has made the soundtrack and millions of faithful listeners' lives over the years. Now there it be resolved by the city of Wilmington that Wilmington City Council thanks and congratulates WDAS FM 105.3 for 70 years of entertainment reflecting of the culture and services of the city of Wilmington and our communities in the region. We look forward to additional continue providing you providing our soundtrack to our lives. Congratulations from the city of Wilmington.
Thank you. Thank you so much. On behalf of the staff of WDAS, we want to thank the city of Wilmington for this wonderful honor. That was a great representation of the history of the station. So 70 years strong, 70 more to go and beyond. And we thank you so much, the city of Wilmington, for this great honor.
Lorraine, it's a pleasure to have you here to represent many of the great personalities at WDS that all of us are aware of and that we grew up on. So it was just an honor on behalf of the City Council to present you 70 years of providing us with not only good music, but also great knowledge and information about what's happening around town. So again, thank you. And this was a pleasure to present that to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we will now move into the legislative business portion of our agenda. I am reversing the order of presentations this evening. Councilwoman Walsh, any legislation this evening?
No legislation. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilmember Guy, legislation this evening? Councilmember Guy? Councilmember Dixon, legislation this evening?
Yes, Madam President, I have a resolution to present.
Resolution 20062, Agenda 4871, whereas under Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974, as amended, the Secretary of the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development is authorized to extend financial assistance to community for 1, the elimination or prevention of slums or urban blight, 2, activities which will benefit low-income and moderate-income persons, and 3, other urgent community development needs.
Madam President, I move that this resolution be received, recorded, and filed, and adopted by a yea, nay vote.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. The resolution be received, recorded, filed, and adopted by a yea, nay vote. On the question?
Yes, Madam President, this is a second amendment to, we had already passed for our fiscal year for real estate and housing for our community development block grants. In addition, for this one is specifically for the second amendment for the emergency solutions grants, which is in the amount of $1.1 million that will go. The first round went to a lot of our housing organizations for utilities and rental assistance due to COVID. And the second round will also authorizes real estate and housing to be able to give again to those type of organizations who still need COVID relief funds.
Are there any comments from members of council? Seeing none, are there any comments from the public? Seeing none and no further comment. Oh, wait a minute, there is somebody. There is one person, hold on. Mr. Dale Thomas.
Thank you, President Shabazz, and thank you, Councilwoman Dixon and the entire council. Again, as I said during my speech earlier during public comment time, I would ask that the council suggest or consider not going for this. Again, 1,000 apologies, Councilwoman Dixon. However, the more money that we take from the federal government, the more indebted we are to them. And though It would certainly help our citizens here. It comes with a heavy price tag, and we don't want to shackle ourselves in this way. So please consider saying no to this, and let's find other ways locally and internally that we can help our fellow Wilmingtonians. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. There was another hand raised, but looked like they lowered it. And with that, there's no further comments from members of council. Our clerk, Councilman Dixon, did you have any closing comments?
No, Madam President, thank you.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Oliver,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harley,
Yes.
Councilman Turner,
Yes.
Councilwoman McCoy,
Yes.
Councilman Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman FREEL,
Yes.
Councilman Adams,
Yes.
Councilwoman Dixon,
Yes.
Councilman Guy,
Yes.
Councilwoman Walsh, Councilwoman Walsh,
Yes.
President Shabazz,
Yes,
12 yeas.
declared adopted. Councilmember Adams, legislation tonight, sir.
Yes, Madam President, thank you very much. I have an ordinance to present and call for the first and second reading.
Ordinance 20-047, Agenda 4870, an ordinance to authorize and approve a one-year extension of contract 20037 FD between the City of Wilmington and City Towing Services, LLC, for the provision of towing and impounding of vehicles.
First reading of the ordinance.
An ordinance to authorize and approve a one-year extension of contract 20037 FD between the City of Wilmington and City Towing Services, LLC, for the provision of towing and impounding of vehicles.
Second reading of the ordinance.
Madam President, I moved that be known as the first and second reading of the ordinance and refer to Public Works and Transportation Committee.
Second.
It's been properly moved in second that be known as the first and second reading of the ordinance and referred to the Public Works and Transportation Committee.
Thank you very much, Madam President.
Yes, sir. Councilmember FREEL, legislation, sir.
Yes, I have one resolution, two ordinances for third and final, and one ordinance for first and second.
Resolution 20-055, Agenda 4859. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Wilmington that the license agreement between the City of Wilmington and Municipal Corporation of the State of Delaware and New Singular Wireless, PCS LLC, authorizing New Singular to among other things, construct, install, maintain, and operate wireless
Madam
telecommunications.
President, I move this resolution be received, record, and filed, adopted by yea, nay vote.
Second.
It's been properly moved in second the resolution be received, recorded, and filed, adopted by yea, nay vote on the question.
Yes, Madam President, this came before us a couple of weeks back. This is to approve an agreement between the city and Singular Wireless to start installing some telecommunications facilities. This will help us with our 4G and start setting a network up for 5G. I think this will be good for all our neighborhoods. We know we have some areas right now that have trouble with service. There were some questions and concerns raised at that meeting, and I encourage the administration and the law department to work with council members to answer their questions. I believe that took place, so it's before us again this evening for approval.
Thank you. Councilmember Harley.
Yes, thank you, Council President. I just wanted to say to Councilman FREEL that I do appreciate him setting up that meeting. I know when this was presented on the floor, I was one of the ones that had some additional questions, and we did meet. The questions that I had regarding some of the unknowns, they were definitely, those questions were answered, and I just wanted to say thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Adams.
Yes, Madam President, thank you. I also would like to thank Mr. Phil for having the solicitor from legal department give me a call and go over some of the items with regard to this resolution. Actually, my comments were more germane to the issue of the fact that we're here regulating cellular. We're here, as far as whether or not where they construct in the right of ways for the city. I just don't think we should be in that business. We ran off and spent $450,000 on consultants for this. And we get $32,000 a year off this contract. This is the first one, but we don't have a lot of them lining up for it. And if you go 10 times 32,000, that means we make 320,000. So we're still in the hole for 130 grand on consultants. Wow, I don't know what moves the city to make its reach even farther into the telecommunications industry. But again, I think we do way too many things that are required for us to do, and we shouldn't be in this business. And I'm going to be voting against this resolution for that reason. We just shouldn't be in the business. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Gray.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I would like to thank Councilman FREEL also. I think this piece of legislation was handled quite well. The way I've been promoting, it was inclusive, open, and very transparent. And he set up a meeting so that we can get our questions answered. And I think it's important that we go forward with the cellular installations because we're going to eventually need 5G. And my understanding is that's going to help to promote communication between our emergency systems. And also it's going to help with the surveillance cameras that are being put in the communities. This will help get the information to move along to the police and whoever else needs to pick it up. So I thank, and I'm echoing Councilwoman Harley that I thank that we had that meeting that could answer our questions. Thank you.
I see no other comments from members of council. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing no comments from the public, Councilman Fielder, would you like closing comments?
No closing comments. We can go ahead and do a roll call.
Clerk, please call the roll. Clerk, you can call the roll.
Sure. Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Oliver,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harley,
Yes.
Councilman Turner,
No.
Councilwoman McCoy,
Yes.
Councilman Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman FREEL,
Yes.
Councilman Adams,
No.
Councilwoman Dixon,
Yes.
Councilman Guy,
Yes.
Councilwoman Walsh,
yes,
President Shabazz.
Yes,
10 yeas and 2 nays.
declared adopted.
Madam President, could I ask if we could go ahead and move to agenda item number 4654, and then we can come back to item 4862?
Yes.
$48.64 or 40.
4654 is what we're going to after we're presenting now.
Substitute 3.
Yes.
Thank you. One moment. Substitute. Ordinance number 19-026, agenda 4654, an ordinance to amend chapters 4 and 34 of the city code to provide for civil fines for owners, rental properties, and vacant properties and increase vacant registration fees.
Madam President, I move that be noticed enacting clause the ordinance call for a yea and a vote, and I have a
Excuse me,
substitute present in lieu of that.
Excuse me, I have to read the substitute.
Right.
Substitute number 3 to ordinance number 19-026, revision 4 to agenda 4654, an ordinance to amend chapters 4 and 34 of the city code to provide for civil fines for owners of rental properties and vacant properties and increase vacant registration fees. Thank you.
Madam President, I move that be known as the acting clause of the substitute ordinance and call for a yea and a vote.
second,
It's been properly moved and seconded that be known as an acting clause of the substitute ordinance and call for the yea and nay vote on the question.
Yes, Madam President, I'm just going to make some brief remarks. I believe most members of council attended the October 5th committee meeting. I wanted to highlight 4 points from that session in this housing legislation. One, that there is and these are some items that we've discussed many times before, a sunset clause expiring in January of 2024. We reestablished the rent withholding clauses in the ordinance. We inserted language that clarified that the civil fines applied to rental and vacant properties only and not to homeowner properties. And we removed the increase in the business license fee. I just want to say, probably in my 24 years, I don't believe any piece of legislation has been vetted and discussed more than this bill. More than 50% of our residents now live in rental properties. The mission of the city is to protect the life, healthy, and safety of all citizens of Wilmington, all citizens, by monitoring buildings through code enforcement. If we cannot get compliance to a minimum of safety codes in a timely manner, we have failed these residents. When you peel away the rhetoric and misinformation, the purpose of this legislation is very simple. For rental and vacant properties, we will go from a criminal enforcement system to a civil enforcement. We will move from a lengthy, cumbersome process that can take 10 to 12 months and leave you with a criminal record to a system that can resolve issues in 3 to 4 months. We have thousands of landlords in the city. Most do a good job. They receive a warning and they correct the problem. They never receive a fine. However, we also have a number of bad landlords and yes, some slumlords. If you don't think this is so, you are kidding yourselves. We have residents that live in deplorable conditions and are intimidated to keep their mouths shut. Council, we have an obligation to these residents. They are our residents. They are our neighbors. We have to let them know that we care and hear their silent anguish. This is a good bill. Every legitimate objection has been addressed. It will hold landlords and inspectors accountable. Council members have to decide between their constituents, the tenants, or the landlords. At this point, Madam President, I will hold any further comments after hearing from my colleagues and the public. I thank you.
Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Madam President. Okay, this is the famous blight bill. And it's about 58 pages. And I've read most of it. And I must say, I don't have a problem with it. But I have questions and I need clarification. And there's no way I can support something that I don't have full understanding of. Now, I know some of my committee fellow council members are going to say that's what committees are for. But let me explain how the committee meeting went. I've been trying to promote inclusiveness, openness, transparency, and I complimented Councilman FREEL with the singular wire ordinance and the openness with that. But this was the total opposite. We had a committee meeting. I'm on the finance committee, and there was a committee meeting. The day of the committee meeting, I did not have my legislation. So I asked for it. And an hour or two before the meeting, I was forwarded 2 pages, which is the amendment, 2 pages. I realized that was an amendment, so I went to look for the original document. I couldn't find it. It was like an hour before the meeting. I went into the meeting, and maybe because I have presided over L&I cases when I was a judge, I'm pretty familiar with L&I procedures. So the 2-page document looked fine to me. It was taking away a fine. But during the meeting, I found out that there was 56 more pages that they had not sent to me of a blight bill. So later, after the meeting, I got a copy of the blight bill from another council person, not from the administration. So I've been reading it. And like I said, I really don't have problems with what's in it, but I have questions. I made notes. There are deletions, there are additions, there are edits that I need to look at the L&I code to see what is taken out, what has been suspended. You just can't read something like this by itself. So the complaint I've been hearing is people don't understand it. And I think that's the problem. They don't understand it. We need to all sit down and go through it page by page with someone from L&I to have total openness so we can ask questions and they can explain. And I don't know what happened to my notes. Oh, it's here. There are repealed sections. There are questions about who are on certain commissions. There's a time period missing for repairs. There are deleted sections. These are all questions that I need answered. And I don't think, I hope we're not going to try to do it tonight with everything else that's on the agenda, but we should have been able to do it at committee, but I never got the other 56 pages. So this is the total opposite of being inclusive and being open and having a discussion about something. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, as my colleague, Councilwoman Gray says, this is the vaunted blight bill, or what I like to call it is the abandoned housing bill. Look, this is something that's been 3 years in the making, and I understand there's a lot of angst, but throughout the 3 years, there has been a lot of involvement. And for those who know Councilman FREEL, he's an open book. Just give him a phone call and he'll answer you, as he has done with legislation throughout his whole career. And so where we sit, where we are right now, is a heavily amended bill, because Councilman FREEL involved those who had questions and tried to make it better. And look, it's not perfect. I'm not going to say it is perfect. In fact, I was the one that pushed to make it a pilot program, because I knew there would be some issues with it potentially. But we're at a point where we can't keep holding off. We held off 3 years ago, held off 2 years ago, held off last year. We can't keep pushing, kicking the can down the road. Where we are with this economic COVID crisis is we're going to face a tremendous bubble, and it's going to hit in 2021. Unless we get a lot of federal intervention. Landlords may not be able to pay. Tenants can't pay. We have a housing crisis. And so we need to do what we can to make sure in this crisis, we give L&I the tools they need to save our citizens. And anything big takes this kind of effort, takes this kind of work, sitting down with 100 pages and reading it. Because those who have criticism, I doubt, have read all 124 pages line by line. I have, and I spent time working with Councilman FREEL on amendments. And look, anything big is scary. When you look at this, some of the biggest piece of legislation in our lifetimes, even the Social Security Act, when that was originally passed, it wasn't perfect. It excluded African Americans and farmers, but it was passed and then was worked on and amended through time. If you even look at a bill like the Dodd-Frank Act, when that was made to clean up Wall Street, folks hollered, well, it doesn't do enough. Sure, but it really helped make sure the bad actors were held accountable. And even if you look at some of the other biggest legislation we've ever done in history, on the federal government side, the Affordable Care Act. A lot of folks say, well, where's the public option? It could be better. But you know what? Something was done. And I, for one, will not stand back and not do anything. And this is something, an attempt to continue to hold our bad landlords accountable. And again, we can be back at the table next year, putting further tweaks, look at the data, doing what we can. But the misinformation about tenant rates being raised, that has been deleted. Fines will not be raised. And if they raise rent because now they're being held accountable, well, that's a problem with the landlords. So we have to cut through the misinformation and really look at progress. And I do understand, and I'm respectful of my colleagues, there are regional differences. Some districts, a lot of folks are against it. Some districts, such as mine, a lot of constituents support it. So it really varies from district to district, but you have to really look at who is being hurt. And this Black and brown community is being hurt by this not being passed. And I said it last year, by this not passing, by something not being done, Black and brown communities hurt the most. And last but not least, this is a justice reform bill. As we talk about justice reform in Dover, this is a chance to do something in Wilmington. Finally, we get a chance to change something from a criminal context to civil. This way, it's a lot fairer, it moves a lot better. I know it's not perfect, but it works. And so for that reason, I would actually like to add myself as a co-sponsor, and the vote is what it is, but we have to step up in Wilmington and finally do something for our people.
Thank you. Councilmember Harley.
Yes, thank you, Council President. First of all, I wanted to start off by saying that with all due respect to my council colleague, Councilman Johnson, who just shared a very lengthy, very thorough speech about this legislation. I definitely respect what has been said, but I also feel as though and I've said this before, doing the right thing the right way is important. Not just doing the right thing, but doing the right thing the right way. And clearly, we had a public hearing, and there is still legislation 4851 that has not been presented and have not been done the right way. So when we listen at these speeches about things not being perfect, and we have to do this for the community and that for the community, all I want is us to do things and do them the right way and want to do what's good for the community. Now, having said that, I respect what Councilman FREEL has done with this legislation. There were a number of requests that we've had regarding taking different portions of and sections out to make it and tweak it to be what it needs to be. But I also feel as though that if we have a missing council person not represented in this full council body, I personally don't feel as though we're doing it the right way. So this is, it has come a long way, and I support this legislation, but I also support a full council body voting on this legislation because the 2nd district is important, as well as all other 7 districts. And I am looking forward to us discussing this a little more, and hopefully we can have a full council body voting on this legislation. So for that reason, I will not be able to support it on tonight, but at a later date. Thank you.
Councilmember Oliver.
Thank you, Madam President. I also would like to echo what our other council members have said about Councilman FREEL, including everyone. I know we've been having several meetings discussing this legislation, and everyone keeps saying blight legislation. It's not blight legislation. There's nothing in here discussing blight legislation. It's legislation to amend the code to provide civil fines opposed to criminal fines. I don't think anyone on this council has more blight in their district as I do. I've walked around, I've knocked on doors. I have a whole booklet on vacant properties. I have rows and blocks of vacant properties. Absentee landlords, you have homeowners who live next door to a house that hasn't been, owners haven't came out in years to even look at the homes. They are blighted on the inside and the out. You have raccoons running through them. You have people who rent and next door a homeowner, and it's just vacant in between houses. So we have to do something to rectify this issue of vacant properties. What I may have in the 3rd district, you may not have in the 5th or the 6th district, but I have plenty of vacant properties. You can ride on the east side, North Street, northeast area, and just see them and record numbers. And in them areas, it's a lot of high crime. So I'd like to thank Mr. FREEL for working with the members of council on this legislation. And like I said, what may be a problem in my district in our 3rd district may not be a problem in your district. So I'm never the type to say what's going on in your district is occurring in my district. So I just like to put that on the books that in the 3rd district, we have a high number of vacant properties and absentee landlords. Most of them live out of town and don't care about brown and black people. Thank you.
Councilmember Adams.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Over 3 years ago, when this piece of legislation first came forward, I guess it was before substitution 1 or all it was not a good piece of legislation. In fact, it covered every property in the city, and there were many points to it that wasn't there. I had problems getting my point across. So I wrote an op-ed piece back in October of 2018. And I was happy to do that because after putting it out into the public, I was able to sit down with the mayor, the sponsor, and a few others in order to get this legislation into a form where it became a much better piece of legislation. The two principles are this. One is we need to protect renters out there, and quite frankly, there are more renters than homeowners here in the city of Wilmington. The only way we can do that is if we do inspections. Without inspections, no ordinance works here. And so working with the administration and the sponsor of the bill, in fact, it was the conversation that I had with the mayor was how we came up with the 10% idea. And that's 1,500 inspections were built into that. I'm hoping that the mayor will move from 1,500 to 2,500 and continue to go upward because we have so many properties here. But inspecting properties each year will protect the renters in the city. That's key. The second thing I'd like to talk about is, look, homeowners should not have their property seized from them. No, I do not agree with that. I don't know of anyone who would agree with that. So quite frankly, having homeowners removed from this piece of legislation was also key. Because I don't care who you are, especially if you've gone through this epidemic, I'm sure you know of someone who is just barely making it, if they can make it at this point in time, and having a city come along and seize their home. Now, it's tough for some people to grab the economics of this, but you have to get the upper middle income before people have more assets outside the equity of their home than they do inside the equity of their home. What I mean by that is their entire net worth is the equity in their home. You've seen the stats. Some people would have problems writing a $400 check to cover an emergency expense. Well, why should we go out there and take the only thing of that and take their entire net worth away by seizing it? So I was happy that the sponsor of the legislation, Councilman FREEL, and the mayor and all let go of the idea that we should have a piece of legislation that can seize someone's home. And so that, in essence, was protecting homeowners. And so this legislation is to the point now where it protects renters by doing inspections, and it protects homeowners by not being able to seize their property unless they have a hearing before a judge in court. And I thought that those were two very key things. I was happy to be the leader of those two issues and to make this happen in this legislation. And since those two things are in there, I will be voting for this legislation this evening. Hey, if it took 6 years, it took 6 years, but we finally got to a point where it's doing certain things that are required in such a thing. In closing, I would like to quickly say, blight legislation does not work by itself. You have to have other socioeconomic things that happen. One is we got to have the economy to work here in the city of Wilmington. We got to have businesses come forward. We got to have a talent pool where people can go to work and be skilled. And I'm glad to have seen that the education lawsuit was settled, and hopefully that'll make a difference to the children here in the city of Wilmington. But unless you have a lot of things happen here, this blight legislation by itself is not the one thing that's going to change Wilmington. We all have to work together to make it a better city of Wilmington. And I look forward to doing that with the mayor, the sponsor of this bill, Councilman FREEL, and everyone else on the city council. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Walsh.
Thank you, Madam President. Couple things surprised me here this evening. I think what most people don't realize about a city council job, or most elected jobs, is that what a city council member has to do more than anything is read. Everything about our job comes down to reading. We get legislation, We get reports from departments. We get all sorts of statistics from all sorts of agencies, from the county, from the state, from the federal government, from community groups. And I would guarantee that a good 60% of our job ends up being about things that we've read. We've had almost 3 years to read this bill, for those who've been around for 3 years. All of a sudden, there's a vacancy in one of the council seats, and that becomes a problem. The vacancy was caused by the person sitting in the seat, not by any of the voters or residents of that district, who also have 5 other people that they can fall back on to represent them. 4 council at large and the president of city council. So like everything else in our government, they're overrepresented, if anything else. Some people, all of a sudden in our country, people that rent properties have become, I don't know, it's like a different source of a resident. And there's no shame in renting at all, because there are people that really should never buy a house because they might be able to afford the rent, but there are many things associated with the house that you don't have to pay when you are renting, such as repairs to the roof and major things that happen to the home that you're renting. The landlord is responsible for that. Those people that are renting these properties should really find out that they have somebody there protecting them, that somebody cares. They're not overlooked just because they're renters. And that's what this bill addresses. For too long, renting has been almost like a dirty word that shouldn't be repeated, even though close to 50% of our properties are rentals. Now we have a guy who lives in the wealthiest district in our city who has taken on this bill. He could have said the hell with it. What do I care? My constituents, even though I do have some bad landlords in my own district, for the most part, my district is fine. And the landlords or the residents of the district somewhat shame people whose property really gets run down, or goes over and asks them if they can give a helping hand. Instead, I see people using as an excuse that there's an empty seat, or just once again, let's sit down and talk about this bill that we have talked to death for 3 years and had a sponsor who is always willing to meet you for breakfast, lunch, or coffee, to come over to your house, to talk to you on the phone, to do whatever he needed to get us to understand what this bill was and is. And I find it amazing that the residents that need this bill more than other areas are the residents that are not going to get representation because their council members who will not vote for this evening. I think it's incorrigible. I think these political games really have to stop. And I think tonight is the line in the sand where it should stop. I'm supporting you, Councilmember FREEL, on taking on this burden. I appreciate all the work you've put into it. I just hope that all the residents that you have stood up for the last 3 years appreciate the amount of flack that you've had to take on this bill, the amount of misrepresentation this bill has gotten. You go to social media and my God, you are looking at 2 different bills. The one on social media and the one in reality printed by the print shop. So I hope you're successful this evening, Councilmember FREEL, but success or not, thank you for being brave enough to do it. That's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilmember McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. I actually just like to start off by apologizing to the residents of the city of Wilmington, because I am actually on the Healthy Community Subcommittee, and about a year ago, we managed to finally get our ordinance through that dealt with nuisance property, vacant properties. And this was something that we have worked hard on with the subcommittee, getting everybody together to make certain that all the voices were heard and pushed, we're able to get this thing through. And that was just one piece of actually addressing the blight bill. I apologize because we did not continue moving forward, because actually I'm looking at the address from the mayor in March, and it stated that the landlords would be held accountable. This is a quote. The landlords must be held to account to substandard living conditions, and city council must give us the tools to fight the slumlords. You told us that the original ordinance was too much at once. Fair enough. We will break up the ordinance into 3 separate ones. We hope to see all 3 adopted by council. That was a direct quote. Now, I was like, whew, because this was hard. This was something that I was not, I said that, of course, with law helping us along the way and all of those other people who came to the meetings, who gave us their input, we were able to finally get one piece done, and we knew that there was still more to do. But knowing that the mayor was on the job and he was going to make certain this happened so that we in turn could get this done, because we understand what needs to be done. But hearing that, I basically started to focus on other things. So this is the reason why I want to apologize to the residents of the city, because I did not stay on the course, because I actually had hoped that this was something that would go ahead and it would finish his way. If administration, if he put somebody on the job, it would just go ahead and get done, but he did not. And now we are here. There are still things that this bill will not directly address. We talk about, dealing with these bad landlords, and this is something that will eventually happen. Like, if they're bad, and they need to make certain that things happen for that tenant. And if they cannot, that tenant will not be able to stay if it's uninhabitable, and we will, or fees will accrue, and that property may be taken. But yet, we still have not really solved a true problem for their neighbors. We have not made certain that if the city takes the property, that, and if it goes into some type of holding pattern, what the next steps are. So these are the things that I felt needed to be addressed, is something that was a separate, that if we were able to separate it, we can address those things directly. And putting something in a holding pattern for that long a time, for years perhaps, until someone actually, or a year or more, until someone actually had the funding to do something with that. I don't think that was actually going to help that neighbor either. If we did not make certain that those places were clean, that they were secured, and that they were watertight, and that they were not compromised their properties as they held. So these are the reasons why I wanted to see a more I wanted to see broken up and actually really address these things directly. And because of that, and I wasn't on the job, because I thought that it was going to get taken care of. And that's why I want to apologize. At this moment, the way things are, I'm unable to support this bill. But I just wanted to make certain that the residents knew why I wasn't on the job. And I said, I am sorry. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councilwoman Harley, Johnson, then Dixon and Guy. Councilwoman Harley.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to just say one other thing, is that I don't think no council member on this floor gets a chance to vote 2 times. So again, I respect my council colleagues' opinions and how they decide to vote. And again, that 2nd district seat deserves representation just like all other 7. And regardless of how the seat became vacant, the fact of the matter is that there are constituents in the 2nd district that deserves representation. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, and one thing I would be remiss not to mention is the undertones of this, and it has to do with the history of the city. And I think that is why this has taken so much work and why we still have more work to do. There's racial undertones to this. It's been called a gentrification bill. I know because of the parties involved, there's mistrust, which I think is warranted. You know, we have a white mayor, and a sponsor of it is white. Then we have a city that's deeply divided and has been hurt. But I do think it's time for us to unify as a city, and we have to look beyond race, and we have to look at the actual actions of individuals. And I understand there is mistrust, but we have to let cooler heads prevail and really work to unify as a city and work on legislation that will help Black and brown communities. And, you know, gentrification, again, that word gets thrown around, but as far as I know, we still have a very poor city. I do not see a Trader Joe's in the city or a Whole Foods on North Market. So not to be funny, but I can take you to some cities that have that. We do not have that yet. Maybe one day we will get there, but we don't have that kind of gentrification. We have a city with deeply entrenched poverty that's highly concentrated in certain pockets of the city. So with that, you know, we have to improve the housing stock and the economic viability of all communities. And again, I applaud, and I've done this several times, applaud Councilwoman Dixon and Councilwoman McCoy. The subcommittee is very important because it's looking at those homeowner issues, which I believe in the 108th session, that is going to be a deep priority to get our homeowners straight, to find federal funding, to find state funding, to make sure our homeowners are taken care of. And I understand that this was not part of that bill. And it's still a lot of work to do. So I applaud those leaders for stepping up and working with that subcommittee. But again, stepping back, we can't let that stop us. We can't let everything not being done in one bill stop us, because there's still a lot more to do. So again, I respect the opinions of all my colleagues, but I just want to call it like it is, like I always have done from day one. Is I think race has a lot to do with it. If it was a Black prime sponsor and a Black mayor, I don't think you would see the resistance from certain pockets of the community. So I just wanted to just lay that out there for folks to think about. That, you know, we have to look beyond race. We have to look at what is going to help our community. And I think Councilwoman Walsh was right. Councilman FREEL did not have to do tens and hundreds of hours of work on this. It doesn't affect him. He can walk outside of his house and see beautiful landscape lawns, and he doesn't have to worry about this. But the communities in the 3rd district, communities in a lot of other districts, the 5th district, those citizens have to suffer. And we cannot stand by and say, well, wait till next year. Because then next year it's going to be the same thing. Oh, let's wait. It's not perfect. And will we be 5-10 years down the line and communities will not have received help? And by then we're already like Chester or Camden.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Dixon.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have to say, I don't care if you call it the blight bill, gentrification, any of those things. The underline is that it's housing, and it's housing for the city of Wilmington residents. And that's where the bill should have been addressed in. So I understand, as far as being a renter also in the city of Wilmington, that I do have to agree with Councilman Walsh that routinely we give renters a bad name in the city of Wilmington for not being homeowners. We have to get out of the business of doing that if we really want to see our renters move into home ownership. I will say that there has been changes over the course of the time that we have been doing this bill over 3 years. And I will say, not only does it feel like Councilman FREEL's bill, it also felt like my bill. I also was going through a lot of the meetings, a lot of the back and forth consistently with law and all those things, as well as the community on making sure that we have a comprehensive policy. And one, I did not have to do that because it is not my legislation, but I did because I care about what happens in the city of Wilmington. So I understand that there, again, there has been changes, and Councilman FREEL has been working with us on it over the course of this time. But I do still feel that the new changes that were, the 4 changes that were being made on October 5th needed to be vetted more than us having just a one conversation in a committee meeting, which was Finance and Economic Development, where it should have been in the Community Development Urban Planning Committee. to have more vetting on what from an actual housing committee, if we're saying that we're addressing housing. So again, we always, as we've been talking about, there's protocol, there's ways of how we do things, and things consistently change throughout the course of time of doing this bill. There's also still issues in what was brought up on the 5th regarding the state with the tenant and landlord code to make sure that we're in compliance, that we cannot be viable if something does happen with our local laws. We still, right now, currently, I know they said that we're not doing inspections. So if inspections are on hold due to COVID, I also don't know what the rush is on that component. I also still feel like that the exemption should not be on the land bank properties as well as for our city properties, more so because our issues with our buildings and our homes are also part of the issue within the city of Wilmington, as which others are as well, that needs to be addressed. And there's also unregistered properties that's not going to be hit by this policy as well, where we found that women are being preyed on upon not having registered properties within the city of Wilmington during COVID. So there are many issues for me that are still within that needs to be dealt with. So I will, at this point, not be supporting the policy this evening. Thank you.
Councilmember Guy.
Yes, Madam President. Councilwoman Dixon made a comment related to the first thing on my list. And that is that this legislation, this topic was originally introduced and it was referred to the Community Development and Urban Planning Committee, which is where it belonged. And this is where we have a problem in the city of Wilmington. It's not just Wilmington, it's a nationwide problem. When George Floyd's incident took place, everybody in the country, black and white, for a minute, recognized that we got to do something about white supremacy and systemic racism. While all that was going on, Wilmington City Council remained committed to white supremacy and systemic racism. What did Wilmington City Council do? Wilmington City Council allowed Councilman FREEL to take his legislation from a committee of people focusing in on community development and urban planning. And because it had to be scrutinized, because it covered so much, he took what I call the route that systemic racism and white supremacy affords a white elected official. What did he do? He reintroduced his same piece of legislation, and in conjunction with the president, they referred it to their finance committee. This is not a finance piece of legislation. They sent it to a committee because that's the committee that upholds white supremacy and systemic racism. And that's exactly what that committee did. That committee released the legislation. They were allowed to say, we're not going to be scrutinized by a committee with a multitude of African-American elected officials on it called Community Development and Urban Planning. We're not going to be accountable to a room of Black elected officials. We're going to be accountable to the mayor's team. So what was said earlier about the racial overtones, they're clear as day. They're purposeful. They're the Delaware way. That's how things work around here. The Community Development and Urban Planning Committee didn't know that that was what was expected of them, to just allow Councilman FREEL to walk through their committee and do whatever he wanted to do, and they're supposed to okay it. So I applaud that committee for not selling out the people who are hurting. That's one thing. Number two, it's absolutely correct. There's a member of council who has been illegally sent a letter by the president kicking him off of council, and nowhere in America are there Zoom meetings where the presiding officer just says, I'm not going to let a councilman log in. So now when you do that, basically, I'm of the view it may be a question whether anything we've done since then is lawful. It's just a matter of somebody filling out the suit papers and seeing what happened. So you may as well not waste your time passing something like this, because somebody should just file a suit and say they're not represented, illegally not represented. I've already
Madam
filed
President.
one for my business.
Madam President.
Now, here we
I have
go
a
with the
point of
white
order to make.
supremacy interruption.
Order,
all
order.
the time. Nobody
I have a
interrupt.
point of order to make.
White
Since
supremacy.
Mr. Guy,
No, you can't
since
interrupt.
Mr. Guy is
You have
the,
the authority
Point
to
of-
represent
Point
me.
of order has been called.
Yeah. So then, what are you gonna do?
Your point,
You gonna honor white supremacy? Go ahead.
your point, Councilwoman Walsh.
since Mr. Guy is the one who has filed the lawsuit against the city of Wilmington and city council over an issue that he's bringing on this floor, as an attorney with membership in the Delaware State Bar Association, he knows better than to
That's
bring
not
up
a point of
pending
order. And I do
legislation,
know better. I
pending
can talk about
litigation.
what I want. So what's our point of order under our rules? White supremacy.
Because it's pending litigation, Mr. Guy. You should know that we're not allowed to speak about pending legislation.
I'm allowed to speak
litigation.
about whatever I want to speak
Point
about.
of,
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
point of order, please. Councilwoman Walsh, your point is
The
correct.
point of order is there is litigation against the city of Wilmington on the subject that he keeps trying to talk about. And he should know that because he's the one who filed the lawsuit.
And I can talk about whatever I want,
Councilman
and so
Guy.
can every council member.
Councilman, will you please do not speak about pending litigation?
You're upholding white supremacy. I'm talking about the
Whatever, Mr.
legislation.
Guy.
You
I
just
just-
want me to not speak because you can't handle it.
Whatever, just say, don't talk about the pending
That's right.
litigation.
So
I didn't stop you about anything else.
You
Continue.
interfered because you were upholding white
It's a point.
supremacy.
Okay, well, so what? I am. So
That's right. That's
you
what
have
you
5
always
minutes
do.
left. You have 1 minute left, Mr. Guy.
Actually, this is my first time too.
I know what it is, but in this time you have 1 minute. Now
That's
you're
correct.
45
Go
seconds.
ahead. Uphold white supremacy. Operation and monopoly. That's what this legislation is. Monopoly. This is all about not caring about the people and people up here faking arguing like they care about the people.
Your time, sir.
Okay, then
Councilman
you can
Adams.
vote me in for my second 5.
Councilman Adams.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Well, I'm sort of disappointed that everything, I guess, Mr. Guy touches has to be considered racism. Now, again, this legislation, there's 2 key things this legislation. The mayor signed on to 1,500 inspections in a year. Prior to this year, they never did more than 300 in any year. Some years they did 100. Who's he protecting when he goes out and inspects a rental unit? He's protecting the citizen that's living there. So yes, it does protect people. He didn't leave anybody out on this. Same way with the homeowners. He's excluding homeowners now. He can't chase homeowners with civil fines. So there, the homeowners protected too. So how can you find racism in a bill that's protecting the entire city? They're either a renter, they're protected by inspections. They're either a homeowner, they're not subject to civil fines. So please tell me, how do you find racism in that? This is just incredible. It's not a gentrification bill because you can no longer seize a person's home, okay, for the economic development or any other reason for that. He has to take them before a judge and explain why they need to take their property if they've been fined criminally for it. So, that has been what has been so disappointing this 4 years, is that there's such a racism espoused by Mr. Guy. And yes, you can be a Black person a racist, and he is. And sadly, that to draw that thing into this piece of legislation, where Mr. FREEL took everybody's input on the thing and changed the legislation so he could get the thing passed, so that he could protect renters and homeowners. Wow, just incredible. Thank you, Madam President.
Councilman Guy.
Yes. Yeah, you're the actual racist because you don't know anything about Wilmington.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the next thing is operation and monopoly. Operation is what are you doing to help people? This is all a game where at the end, the object is to take certain strategically located properties. It doesn't matter whether you use a civil route or a criminal route. At the end of the game, they got targeted properties that they're trying to get to over time in certain neighborhoods. Everybody knows it and it's going on all over the country. Next item. It is the Gentrification Act of 2020, as
No, it's
opposed
not.
to operation, as opposed to money and resources to help the people who have properties that are burdened, or to assist renters in selecting properties. The object is to take, and the people who want to take politically are connected with corporate interests, and so they don't need to take it next week or next month. They'll take it in 20 years if it takes them that long to get to it. It's been going on in Wilmington for years already. The same people who are fighting for this are the people who tried to cut city council in half. So when you talk about who cares about the citizenry, that's all part of taking. That's why there's no regard for taking Councilman Congo's seat illegally, because they tried to take half a council and it got voted down. I put out an idea in the beginning of council that we should focus on homes that are attached to vacant homes. Those are the people who are one subgroup of people that are particularly hurting. But in a world of white supremacy, a mayor has no interest in ideas that come from people that aren't white or aren't owned. So that idea has been there, available, and it's a lot of people who could benefit from that. We live on a council where you can't even get legislation introduced if the corporate and mayor interests don't want the president to allow it to be introduced. Now, I was able to sneak one in called pre-rental inspection. So the gentleman over there, Adams, who's the racist, he forgot I put in pre-rental inspection legislation.
You always talk about.
He seems to forgot. He seems to have forgot. I didn't mention his name. He jumped in, and you're jumping in now.
Yeah.
You work with them, so stay over there.
I'm
pre-rental inspection legislation.
Always out of order.
And it's still pending. Just wait your turn, and it's still pending.
And always out of order.
And when this gets voted down, if it does, the pre-rental has already been inspected, and it's over at the correct committee to be able to be addressed. So that's in process. EFG. I agree with the council members who said these things should have been broken off into separate issues. That's why I put in that pre-rental inspection legislation. This thing needs to be broken down into parts.
30 seconds.
Okay. This is the city of the exploited, and this is designed to exploit and to take. That's the end game. In the interim is designed to try to look like it's designed for a good purpose.
Your time.
I'll pick up the rest on, if any of the public speaks, I'll speak after them. Thank you.
There's so much misinformation that has been passed out here, and I pray that our constituents are able to deal between the issue which is the ordinance at hand, and not all the emotional rhetoric. I also like to make sure that it's known that all pieces of legislation are available on a cloud, and all council members have their own Surface Pro laptop. They have immediate access to get any piece of legislation at any time that they need it. So I just wanted to make that disclaimer. So now we will go to the public. I think we have a couple people who, Miss Amanda Rose, you have 3 minutes to make comments.
Thank you. Good evening, City Council members, representatives, and members of our community. I am speaking before you this evening to address concerns regarding Ordinance number 19-026, also commonly referred to as the Blight Bill. On the surface, one can see the agenda related to this bill and understand how there could be concerns from the public regarding disadvantages that could arise for a smaller local real estate investor with 1 to 2 properties versus the advantages it grants to larger commercial real estate investors such as the Puccini-Polling Group, which could potentially lead to additional gentrification within the city. Upon closer examination of this ordinance, when reading all 59 pages of it, it is evident that not only should there be a concern for the battle between small real estate investors versus large, and a lack of protection against the monopolization of the market, but that there should be even more tremendous concern regarding the disadvantages that this entire document creates to current residents, and especially for those residents who are currently within landlord-tenant agreements. Many of you have stated this evening that your largest concern is related to the renters in the city. Of course, I agree with this statement, but the issue is that this bill lacks clarification of protection of occupants' rights. If we push this forward at this point, knowing the COVID pandemic we are in, I ask you, how many occupants will be at an even higher risk of losing their homes in the time between now versus a year from now while we're waiting for amendments to be made and the bad landlords are finding their very obvious loopholes that exist in this bill? There are too many opportunities due to a lack of clarification and specification within this text that would allow for landlords to take advantage of their tenants when ultimately those tenants are at the highest risk of endangerment, of being displaced and homeless. Much of the wording within this bill is advantageous to the city inspection board and subject to their own discretion, but risks simultaneously infringing on the tenants' personal rights and freedoms based solely on their housing situations. Please consider adding more protections and clarity to this document of those processes for protection before moving forward with voting to approve it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. James, there's no last name.
Good evening, council. I'm gonna try to be as brief as possible. I've written down a few thoughts as I was listening to the exchange between the members. First, if down in the Beltway and across the country, Democrats are up in arms because the president is pushing through a Supreme Court justice this close to an election, and that's odious to democracy because of a lack of representation. And, you know, if Councilman Congo not living in his district was similarly odious because of a lack of representation, then certainly, you know, the people of the second district being left voiceless has to be equally repulsive. I'd also like to add to that point that I find the suggestion that the very members who opposed him every step of the way on this piece of legislation, you know, the fact that those members represent his council better than him when his district elected him, you know, to be insulting on its face. So, you know, again, to reiterate the exigencies to address, you know, Councilman Johnson specifically, the exigencies of COVID don't override democracy. Councilwoman Harley was correct on this point. It may be the case that, you know, members are required to read every piece of legislation and everything that comes to their desk, but in the middle of a pandemic that's going on its 5th month, you can't expect for citizens to have done the same thing. That's another reason that this being brought up for a vote seems a bit irregular to me. Turning to the mistrust aspect,
You can comment on the legislation that we're presenting, sir.
So there's mistrust around the legislation that's being presented precisely because of these irregularities. The fact that there's a missing member of the council, the fact that, you know, people don't have representation, the fact that you know, Ms. Gray has said that there are redactions and things of that nature that haven't been addressed. There's just a lot going on that is strange. And like, I don't feel comfortable, you know, I don't feel comfortable with the fact that we have members of council speaking blithely about gentrification as if the lack of a Trader Joe's or whatever, you know, constitutes the lack of gentrification. I went to college in Roxbury, and frankly, there's not one. I went to college in Boston. I lived in Roxbury. They gentrified Roxbury, and there's not a Trader Joe's there. So to Mr. Adams' point, and to the point of the comment that was right before me,
James, your time. Your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Christina, okay.
Thank you. I won't be nearly as eloquent as the two speakers before me. I mentioned my piece at the beginning of this meeting, and with some of the comments from the council members here tonight, I am more concerned now about this bill than I was previously. Your bias is showing. I have read all 59 pages as presented, along with the amendments and the prior proposals, Mr. Johnson. And you're right, it is a problem for the landlords, but that's our problem. There's nothing in here, there's nothing in this bill that protects the renter from the landlord in this case. There's not. No matter how many ways you try to push it sideways, there's not. There's nothing that protects this renter if their landlord has their property seized. There's nothing that keeps this renter off of the street. Ms. Harley is absolutely correct. We do need to do the right thing the right way, and this is not the right way. No bill should need this much discussion, and the fact that it has needed this much discussion should be sending red flags in every direction. The fact that there are professionals sitting on this call rolling their eyes and laughing at each other is disgusting. Especially when we're talking about the possibility of people losing their homes. Again, no matter how many times you try to say that that's not here, that is here, and it is veiled in the terminology within this bill. Personally, I'm disgusted, and honestly, most of you should be disgusted with your behavior tonight. That's all I have to say.
I'd like to remind members of the public that your comments are to be to the ordinance, please. Mr. D. Marquet Hall.
Good evening. Thank you guys for allowing me to speak. I had to turn off my laptop. I had two screens up, but I'm definitely against this bill, whatever name you choose to call it. It is something that is going to be incredibly detrimental to my community that needs help in the 3rd district. Councilwoman Xanthia Oliver mentioned that we have so much violence in the 3rd district. It's so true. We have a lot of violence that stems from these buildings, that stems from these vacant properties. The abandoned houses is where the young man over the weekend, Mr. Demby, was killed. The abandoned houses over on 10th Street. There's whole blocks that are filled with vacant properties. The problem is that the city owns these vacant properties that need to be dealt with, and the city is not being held accountable with this blight bill. The city is exempt, and the city is the biggest landlord throughout our entire city. 2,000 going on 3,000 properties that the land bank has that need to be addressed, need to be fixed up, that are being lived in, that are being broken into, that are being burnt up, that are being sold out of, that are being used for illicit gains, that are being used to gamble out of, that are being used to be places where people end up dying. We have got to make sure that the land bank is held accountable. We got to make sure that people have access to these properties that have ideas, that may not have the money. They may not have the resources. We got to be able to help people that want to put in a greenhouse in a neighborhood, a library right in the middle of your block, a daycare, a church, a business, a hair salon.
30 seconds.
So this bill and what it is that the community has, what the community could have, that's being handcuffed, that's being boarded up, that's being taken, and then signs go on that say land bank, they don't help anybody. But there's so many parents that are afraid to send their kids to the alternatives that we do have, afraid to send their kids to the Boys and Girls Club when they live on the north side. They could have a library or a Zoom house right there on the block.
Your time, sir.
That's what these buildings need to be. They need to belong to the community, and we got to take it back. Write D in November 3rd and on your mail-in ballot.
Your time, sir.
Write D in.
Mr. Dale Thomas.
Here we go. Thank you. Thank you, President Shabazz. Thank you, Council, and thank you, fellow Wilmingtonians. I did speak on this earlier. I generally, again, like the idea of, decriminalizing things. However, and I understand, Councilman FREEL, you've spent a lot of time on this, and everybody on the council has. And that's, not to put down your work. In fact, you've done Herculean efforts with this. However, I think there have been legitimate issues that have been brought up tonight, especially my own councilman, Councilman Johnson, comparing it to Social Security and the ACA. These are two items that are insolvent and are not working. And so it encourages me more to say we really need to get this right. We didn't expect the pandemic, and how things have gone forward with it. We didn't expect Congressman Congo to be missing. And there are other items, about protecting renters, protecting landlords, because we need to protect them as well. And we need to treat everybody equally. I would ask the council to please just hold off on this. I know it's been a lot of time, but things have come up. I think there have been legitimate issues that have been brought up that we need to get this right. We do need to help renters. We need to help landlords, but we need to get it right. So please, I'm asking you to vote no. Again, this is Dale Thomas from the 7th District. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Sinead Darby.
Good evening, Council. My name is Sinead Darby. I live in the 2nd District, and I am the elected candidate for 2nd District. So I'll be working with some of you soon. Where do I even start? I already commented, but pretty much I am asking everyone to say no to this blight bill. The main reason is that 2nd District needs to have a voice. Trippy Congo was kicked off of City Council illegally, and there's no voice for him or for anyone in that seat for the 2nd District. 2nd District residents do not want the bill in this current state. I'm telling you guys this now. Trippy would have voted no to this blight bill. At large, people are not representing the 2nd District. I have been working on the blight bill on community organizing, knocking on doors, talking to residents directly. They do not want this blight bill in the 2nd District. I'm telling you guys this now. So I think it would be very unfair. It will be an injustice to every single resident in the 2nd District if you guys vote for this bill and let it go through. And then we have to, the new council members will have to clean up y'all mess because y'all want to rush things this during this election, this council year. So please, I'm begging you guys, don't please don't vote yes to this blight bill. And I hope enough of you guys say no, so that we as a council can work on this together to make sure that this blight bill does not negatively affect our communities. So I'm asking, please no. It's just, we don't have representation, and that's all. I'm not even going to go in on the blight bill because there's so many issues or problems with it. But just the fact that there's not a full council, we need to not vote on this tonight, or everyone needs to say no. And remember, we're watching, and it will be recorded. Everyone will be held accountable to their vote, and the community will know, and I will make sure the community knows. I'm very grassroots, and I'm for the community, and I want to make sure they know how their council person is voting. Have a good night.
Mr. Congo? Mr. Congo?
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, council. Thank you from everyone in the public who has chimed in. And Shanae Darby, you are absolutely right. If I were on council, I would have not supported this. I'm glad that you had the same views as I do. And I don't see how a city council can move forward with legislation knowing that we don't have a full council. And there could be a full council in 3 weeks. And that's what I think the public really needs to know. I'm not sure why this is being rushed. Well, I am sure why. But there could be a full council in 3 weeks when Ms. Darby could be positioned in that second district seat, and she would not support it. So I think that speaks volumes. Councilman Johnson, we have not been kicking this down the road. We have been trying to get it right. You yourself said it's not perfect. We should not pass legislation of this magnitude unless we have it perfect. Councilman FREEL, I understand the work that you have put in it, but like you said, and like other council members have said, your district will not be affected the way other districts will. So I don't buy that Councilman FREEL is a hero because he doesn't have anything to do with it. That's why he's pushing it, because his district will not be affected. Council, I implore you to not pass this bill. Thank you very much.
Kristen Waller? Will Waller? Sorry, I mispronounced your name.
Thank you very much, Council, for the opportunity for public comment. We all agree that improving the quality of housing, and particularly rental property, is vital, but this bill is not the answer. This bill is not, this ordinance is not criminal justice reform. This ordinance is a major modification to the City of Wilmington's housing code. The main thing that this bill would do is create fines of $250 a week for any code violation that is in a rental or vacant property that is not fixed in 30 days. Those fines would all add up every week and become a first priority foreclosable lien on the property. We are in the middle of a pandemic. We're on Zoom. Elle and I can't even do inspections right now. We're in a recession, I think. We're facing a spike in evictions nationwide. We have a vacancy on council. Let's take the time. We have the time to do this right. I would ask City Council to not support this ordinance tonight and to give the Housing and Community Development Healthy Community Subcommittee the opportunity to develop a comprehensive set of policies to improve housing issues in the city. This committee has already developed legislation imposing civil penalties on owners of vacant properties who don't keep their properties clean, secure, and watertight. That ordinance was passed by council. To improve rental properties, instead of fines, we should be focusing on inspections and on making sure that all rental properties are registered. We have the time to do this right. Thank you for your consideration. Let's take that time. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. There's no other comments from the public. We'll go back to members of council. Councilman Guy.
Yes. Now, aspects of this piece of legislation, it is so wide ranging. This is a perfect piece of legislation as to why I previously had said there needed to be a judiciary committee, because what has not ever even been discussed about this legislation are the civil rights aspects of it, have never been a component of the conversations. It deals with housing. in the quality of housing, and it's in identifiable neighborhoods. In fact, the city of Wilmington has some degree of a major problem in things getting this bad over time. But the fix could end up being worse than the problem. So, like I said, I put in legislation for pre-rental inspection that's still pending, because that was designed to get right to the heart of one aspect of this. So I don't believe that this council should really mess with this whole piece of legislation. The next council needs to have a clean sheet of paper and an honest committee that's not rigged, where these topics can be addressed and discussed. But the reason why it's rigged and it's so one-sided is because it's exactly what I called it, the Gentrification Act of 2020. It's about the road to taking people's property. Wilmington is the city of the exploited, where folks are always looking at ways to engage in monopoly instead of operation, instead of helping the people who are hurting to have a better life. It's about monopoly and taking. And so I hear people talk about the vacant seat. And first of all, Councilman Congo is still in his seat. And so in November, part of the game plan is to fill his seat to be able to vote on this.
You're out of order, please
To
talk.
vote on this. No, I'm in order because I'm disclosing y'all's game plan, because I know what you do. They have a game plan while they've been stalling for months
You're out of
to
order.
get a vote from the second district. If you heard Councilwoman Harley, the people who are doing this oppressive legislation, they're sitting back saying, oh, okay, so if we put somebody in the seat, then she'll vote for it. That's what they think.
Councilman Guy, please.
So
speak.
there's multiple games being played designed to get this legislation passed. See, luckily, I'm not new to this game. So there ain't too many tricks that folks can try to play that I haven't seen.
Which is why you should
So
know.
I understand exactly what you're trying to do and how the effort is to exploit the circumstance that was created illegally. So with that in mind, I believe that there's no appropriate time right now for this to go to the subcommittee. The subcommittee is waiting to hear my legislation about the pre-rental inspection. That's the next item in line for the subcommittee when they get together and work again. I already got legislation referred to them. And so that is something that is doable to improve life for the people who rent and for the people who are the people who provide rental housing. So that's all I have right now, Madam President.
Councilman Johnson.
Sometimes when I sit here, I almost think I'm hearing Mitch McConnell speaking, because you just hear about obstructionism. You hear a lot of just anger, frankly. And at the end of the day, you have to take a step back and really think about why this needs to be done. Again, we heard a lot of comments, frankly, by some individuals that don't even live in the city. And I certainly understand the procedural aspects of this. I'm not Councilman FREEL. I believe the original intent was that this was a finance-related piece of legislation because it had to deal with increase in fines, which that part was then taken out. Look, at the end of the day, we can not pass it, and that frankly may happen. But again, we have to look at who loses. And time again, it's the poorest communities in our city that lose. So frankly, those who think they're spiting BPG and the developers, you're actually helping them, because by you not voting, but then by you not having a comprehensive piece of legislation to then present, you're only having the developers win. So that's the way, if you just take emotion out of it, that's the thing that happens. And I said this last year, by something not passing, the status quo remains, and it will get worse. And we talk about time, let's work on it. But again, 3 years is a long time, and nothing, no pieces of substantive legislation has been presented. And similar to Mitch McConnell, where he won't vote on the HEROES Act, he hasn't presented an alternative. And so I ask us, and again, I'm willing to look at and vote on a comprehensive piece of legislation that encompasses the scope of this piece of legislation. But unfortunately, I believe this vote in this ordinance, I think this really is a perfect example of the dysfunction that I think, unfortunately, this council has experienced, where unfortunately, instead of compromise and negotiation, it becomes a us versus them. And the people that lose out are the folks in the city of Wilmington. And I think you saw, even this past election season, a lot of folks voted for those who can work with others and will not just think about your views. Because again, I certainly understand both sides, and I certainly understand the concerns. And that's why I went to Councilman FREEL to work on the amendments and work on making this a pilot program. This is not forever. And, the thing is, by not trying, again, we're just waiting. So again, I really implore the best of us to rise above this. I know we've been through a lot as a council. Certainly a lot of things have happened that are good, but a lot of things that happen that aren't so good. But we have to put the citizens of Wilmington first. And that's all I ask. Let's take emotion out of it. Who's in this seat? Who's in that seat? I'm not even getting to that. I'm just getting into let's get a good piece of legislation that will make lives better. Okay, better than it is today. And then let's move forward as a city. And a lot of things are talked about with funding. Let's do things with homeowners. The city does not have unlimited money. And so as we move forward as a city, we have to find creative and ingenious ways to be able to fund these things. The city budget is not unlimited. Our tax base is shrinking. So we have all these major issues that we're in crisis that we're dealing with the city. So I completely agree that we have to work as a city. So that's all I ask. Again, I just hope the better of us prevails. If not, then, I'll be right back there at the table, and we got to work on something. But, this has to stop where we don't have an alternative to vote on. I wish I had 2 big bills to vote on right now, but there's only one.
Councilman Guy.
Yes. Fortunately, there are alternatives. There's a pre-rental inspection legislation pending that takes care of a portion of this. So that'll be when if this doesn't pass, I'll be asking the council member whose committee it was referred to get that scheduled so it can be considered by this council. Now, that's what I call putting up alternatives that at least get you started doing something. And I heard the councilwoman earlier who she was believing that there was going to be 3 new pieces that I guess never showed up for us to take this off and take this issue up kind of a piece by piece. And the one thing is that whoever has the pen in their hand and drafts this kind of stuff, they're not drafting it for them to lose. They're drafting it for them to win. And if the folks who control the pen are the folks who have been already engaged in gentrification, then every word that people have mentioned that's questionable, you're not seeing things. It is questionable. And it's a long list of items, and folks will get away with what they can. And it's always interesting that there's always an effort to make Black elected officials somehow feel as though they are not being righteous if they're not doing what's in the interests of systemic racism. So I want to tell every Black elected official, first of all, don't let anybody here give these speeches that make you feel like your position on the merits is wrong because you're not doing
Council President.
Gentrification asked for them to do. Here go to white supremacy crying. She got 5 minutes if she wants it.
Councilman Guy, please stick to the ordinance.
I'm speaking to the ordinance because all you guys been doing is making these emotional pleas. You're going to hurt Black people if you don't vote for this. That's bullshit. Black people been getting killed in Wilmington
Guys, you're out of order. Please
legislation.
stick to the ordinance.
Yeah, I understand. I'm talking about the ordinance. Ordinance is in the context of a community of the exploited.
Please stick to.
That's right.
Please
So
leave
this
it
is exploited
126.
legislation. Obviously, you're always for that, and that's why you always interrupt me. But I'll be voting against it, and the $3.4 million that's missing could be used to help address some of these houses. But you wouldn't investigate that. So don't start with me. That's all I have.
Seeing no other comments from members of council, Councilman FREEL, would you like closing comments?
Yes, Madam President. This is going to be tough. I tried to take some notes, but you know, a lot of the comments and were actually speeches and rhetoric, and a lot of it very divisive. But I did want to just kind of touch on a couple of things. You know, I don't know what to say to council members that said they didn't have time to read it and they just got it and before the committee meeting. This bill has been out there. Even this version's been out there for almost a year. The only changes that were made was to remove the business license fee increase, and that should have been easy to understand. And then the other one was clarification on some language that didn't change the ordinance. So I think we have been very open and very accountable to anyone that's had questions and comments during this process. As far as not voting it because there's a council member missing, you know, that council member created that situation. He moved out of his district. I don't know what else to say about that. We should be just focusing on this legislation, and the district council members should be voting based on what's good for their district. I do believe this is a smaller piece of legislation than what we had before. It might not be as small as some wanted, but I think it's a piece that's very easy to understand. And I think, you know, the intentions are that we want to help our tenants and we want a better housing stock here in the city of Wilmington, because that helps everyone. That helps the senior citizens who live in some of the low income areas with their property values, if all properties are being taken care of. This idea that we're going to seize rental properties is just not realistic. There is no landlord that is going to let you seize his property. I mean, he's going to eventually start fixing the property up and at least bringing it up to minimum code because it's a source of income for him. And the idea that he can just raise rents isn't realistic either. I mean, realtors will tell you that the market will drive the rental rates. So if he raises the point where he can't get that much money, he's not going to do it. So it's just not a legitimate argument. As far as the committees, I mean, if they want to keep arguing about which committee it's in, that's fine. I just think it's a waste of time. This is in compliant with the landlord tenant code, and the landlord tenant code does have protections for tenants, and it's a state code, and it applies to the city of Wilmington. So we are not in conflict with that. The land bank is not exempt from code enforcement. Inspectors can still go out and ticket land bank properties if they choose to. It is exempt from vacant property fees, but not from code enforcement. And there's language in here talking about quarterly reports before housing committee, and you know, if the land bank isn't doing its job, that needs to come up. But you know, at the same time, the land bank is out there promoting a homestead program, you know, selling properties to folks here in Wilmington that want to fix those properties up and live in them. So they are doing good things. One of the public comments, and I can't believe I still hear this, is that the bill creates a fine. The fine has been in the code for years and years and years. You know, right now, if you look at the code, that fine, that $250 fine, can be imposed on a daily basis. You know, so if you read it, you'll see that. I mean, we changed that. You know, it's just it's frustrating to hear some of these comments. You know, the bill has been out there for 4 years. I've gone to numerous meetings. I've had numerous discussions with council members. And the only time there seems to be any interest in it is when it finally hits an agenda. And when it doesn't hit the agenda, nobody's talking about it. Nobody's working on it. All these other things I hear about subcommittees and that, I'm just not seeing a lot coming out of it. You know, there's no games being played here. I mean, we're trying to do what we think is the right thing for the citizens of this city. We had pre-rental inspections before and it didn't work. And I'm not convinced that if you put that back in, it's going to work this time. It's going to defeat the purpose that Mr. Adams was trying to meet, because you're going to end up inspecting the same properties over and over again, and they're going to be the better landlords because they're the ones that follow the law. So, you know, you can push that idea, but it didn't work the first time, and I'm not sure it's going to work this time. You know, I don't know what to say. If people are opposing this because I'm the sponsor, you know, I feel bad about that. But, you know, I represented the entire city for 16 years as a large council member. And I went to meetings in every corner of the city. So I do understand what the issues are. I mean, I worked for years on vacant properties and nuisance properties. It was an interest I had, and I tried to do everything I could to improve the housing stock here in the city of Wilmington. But even for this legislation, I mean, I didn't do this in a cocoon, that's for sure. I went around and met, you know, with a number of the NPCs, and I can tell you, I met with the Second District NPC, and they were very supportive of the legislation, and that was back before some of the changes that we made. So I don't know what to tell those folks that think the Second District's getting cheated, because they're not. They have housing issues there, and they would like them addressed like everyone else does. You know, I don't know what to say. I mean, this bill is pretty simple to understand. Working under a criminal code just hasn't worked, and making it civil, I think, for rental properties and vacants will go a long way to improving things. And to think that you're going to have a perfect piece of legislation, I've never seen one yet in my 24 years. So, you know, I mean, it basically comes down to this. I mean, either we side with the tenants and we try to do something to help them, or we side with the slumlords, and most of them live outside the city. They're probably laughing right now as they watch this, but you know, that's the choice. And, you know, if it fails, it fails. I know in my heart that I've done everything I can to try to help the residents in this city, not just my district, but the entire city. And I can sleep at night, I can tell you that. That's all I have, Madam President. So I guess you can just go ahead and take the roll call.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Gray,
No.
Councilwoman Oliver,
No.
Councilwoman Harley,
No.
Councilman Turner,
No.
Councilwoman McCoy,
No.
Councilman Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman FREEL,
Yes.
Councilman Adams,
Yes.
Councilwoman Dixon,
No.
Councilman Guy,
No.
Councilwoman Walsh,
Yes.
President Shabazz.
Yes.
Five yeas and 7 nays.
Declare defeated.
Madam President?
Councilman Adams?
Yes, ma'am. May I please be excused from the meeting?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Madam President, just double checking the order, which is for the next piece for Councilman FREEL. 4862, is that correct?
4862.
Thank you. Ordinance 20-046, Agenda 4862, an ordinance to authorize and approve a contract between the City of Wilmington and Axon Enterprise, Inc. for body cameras and related services.
Madam President, I move that be known as an acting clause of the ordinance and call for a vote.
Second.
It's been probably moved in second. That be known as the acting clause of the ordinance to call for a yea and a vote on the question.
Yes, Madam President, I got so many papers here, I'm having trouble finding them. But what this does is this enters us into a 5-year agreement with Axon company to go ahead and purchase our cameras, our body cameras, about 319 cameras. The good thing about this is they get replaced at 2.5 and 5 years at no cost to us, because as we know, technology changes almost on a daily basis, and what's new today can be obsolete in 2 years. This includes a fee to store all the material in the cloud. Payment will be over a 5-year period. There is a 5-year warranty. We will have extra cameras if there are any defects. They will be helping to train our officers, so we can train all our officers on how to use these cameras. So this kind of comes right in conjunction with the great news we heard today from the administration that our grant was approved. So if we can get this approved tonight, we can start moving forward immediately with a contract to go ahead and purchase these cameras. So that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson.
I would like to commend Councilman FREEL, and in fact, all the my colleagues who have worked on this. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor. This is historical, that we're going to finally have a body camera program, and the wonderful news that we got over $600,000 grant from the federal government should make everyone happy. So, you know, that's how life is. You know, what just occurred over the past hour, I think is going to be a low point in city history, frankly. We'll look back, but, you know, we must move on, and this is a tremendous step forward. But I do have to put the facts out there in the record, because we have certain individuals who were pushing to push this forward without waiting for the grant. So it would have cost taxpayers over $600,000, and we wouldn't have been able to receive the federal grant. So that just lets the public know that there are some folks who are willing to be patient. There are folks who are willing to wait. And I know it's tough, you know, because we needed to make yesterday, but we lost the first time we applied, so we had to do it again. And this was the right thing. So similar to, you know, you hear the phrase, you know, trust the process. The process was trusted, and it's working out in the benefit of citizens without putting overburden on our you know, Black and brown taxpayers. So, you know, just put it out there that that's how government's supposed to work. You know, we're supposed to do things like this. We're supposed to put in applications, write it out. And so the right things happen. So this is a shining example of why we can't jump to the gun, and we can't just waste taxpayer money. We have to be vigilant and seek out resources. So kudos to WPD. And really the next step is now implementing them, because similar to other police reforms, we have to make sure it's done the right way, and officers are held accountable when they don't turn their cameras on, when they lost their camera or footage got lost. You know, that stuff needs to be ironed out in the next few months, as well as the items with the FOP. So that's to be discussed in upcoming public safety meetings. But this is, again, an example of government at work, and we're very blessed as a city to receive this grant.
Thank you. Councilwoman Harley.
Thank you, Council President. I don't have a lecture, but I want to say that I am uber excited tonight regarding this legislation. And I was very excited at 5:13 or 5:14 when I seen the email or the press release come out that we received the grant. And I really feel that this is a very good example of doing the right thing the right way. Of course, when we decided to hold off because we wanted to wait for the grant, there were other council members that wasn't sure if this was the right thing to do, but we held our grounds and we said, hey, we wanted to wait to see if the grant came through. So doing the right thing the right way, it definitely works out for everybody. So it was a win-win for the city, it's a win-win for the community, and it's definitely a win-win for this council. Thank you.
Councilwoman Oliver.
Yes, and I did what Councilman Harley said. I was also excited when I saw the email that the grant had came through. And I want to say the same thing she said, but my notes were basically the same thing. I'm glad that the grant came through, and it is a win-win for the city of Wilmington residents. And kudos to city council for holding off, waiting for this grant to help save taxpayers money. Thank you.
Councilwoman Walsh.
Yes, thank you, Council President. I would just like to point out that until we got a yes or a no about the grant, the mayor would not have just spent $600,000 to get the body cameras, because whether we want to believe it or not, we don't have $600,000 right now to get the body cameras. He promised he would get them, and he promised he would get them if it was a no. And it's not a no. We have the money, and because we still have no idea what the impact of this pandemic is going to be on our little city, which doesn't have a whole wide tax base to make sure that it runs every day. So just to keep that in mind for future projects. And I thank those council members who did patiently wait to hear whether or not we were going to get the grant. Thank you, Council President.
Councilmember Guy.
Yes, I want to thank a couple of people. First of all, I want to thank Councilman Trippy Congo, and I want to thank Councilman Vash Turner, who during this council introduced legislation to purchase the body-worn cameras. And their legislation was stolen from them, and it now has other people's name on it. Because again, because of all of the illnesses of this council and this society we live in, it's okay to steal legislation from these two Black men. But that's the world that we live in. And so, you know, I guess that may be the world that Wilmingtonians live in forever, where Black folks' rights and interests as legislators just get stolen. And that has consequences, because 20 years from now, the lie will be on a piece of paper as to who sponsored this. Now, there's the people who like to tell Black people, oh, it don't matter who gets credit. And that's the biggest lie that could ever be told. And if you tell your children it don't matter, you're doing them a disservice, because what they do, they should get credit for. So that's one thing that, even though it's great, the cameras are coming, and it's been a long fight. And there's a lot of people who had various roles in this, but for this council, they introduced that legislation. And that's part of why it was so important to try to get rid of Councilman Congo illegally. So that makes the theft that much easier. Now, when it comes to how much money city council and the government has, I want everybody in this sound of my voice to understand that about 6 or some months ago, the treasurer, Velda Jones Potter, came up with an idea to basically save the city $7 million. So and she provided information on how to finance the purchase at the lowest possible price through certain things that she's aware of and shared. And so I want to thank her, because the promise that there would be money was because she found $7 million that we could capture. We just live in a society where the people didn't go get the 7 million she found because they didn't want it to happen where people would recognize it was her idea. So now they want to come around and say that they came up with the idea. So the money was always there when she identified this money. So I'm glad that we're getting body cameras, but there's two things that we still haven't been given. We've not been given any copies of any document that says we've been awarded anything. That has not been distributed to council. The other thing is we have not received any draft regulations so that the civil rights community and people who have concern about civil rights can look at it and review it, including myself and others, to see what type of provisions are in it. Because one of the big arguments are, what do the rules and regulations say? So even though the chief told us last summer that he had them ready and he was asked to distribute them, he never distributed them so that people could have input. So we're still
30 seconds.
at that hurdle to jump over. And then the last hurdle back then, they said they didn't have an agreement with FOP when they tried to use that to prevent cameras, and we still haven't seen an agreement with the FOP. So hopefully them hurdles will be jumped over. But again, thank you, Councilman Congo, and thank you, Councilman Vash Turner, for introducing this. And it's a shame that you have to be in an organization that steals your legislation. That's all I had.
Seeing no other comments from members of council, we do have go to the public, and we have two individuals who'd like to speak. Mr. Dale Thomas.
Thank you again, President Shabazz, and thank you, council. So this is the third thing I spoke about earlier tonight during public comment period. I want to thank the entire council for working together on this, for hearing your constituents, especially in this tumultuous time. I think this is very much needed, and I applaud you for it. Though I don't like the Orwellian overtones of cameras everywhere, I do appreciate that this will keep everybody, both the police and the constituents, safe by having a record of what takes place. And that's a very good thing. The libertarian philosophy is that the only role of government is to protect people from force and fraud. And I think this definitely protects people from those things. As far as saving money for taxpayers, again, thank you. Patience is appreciated. I would say, however, that the grant money, is coming from taxpayers, just countrywide as opposed to citywide, being that it's federal money. And I do hope that there are no strings attached. There usually are. It's the concept of TANSTAFL. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Nonetheless, it is nice that we can save money here, even if we have to take it from others, which is a shame. Hopefully we can find other ways to raise money. And I do want to say in regards to this, thank you for acknowledging that we don't have a finite amount of money. That's very important. And I'm glad that many of you have said that out loud. So again, thank you for working on this, helping the police, helping the public, helping Wilmingtonians get this passed. And that's all I have to say. Thank you again.
Thank you. Amanda Rose.
Thank you, President Shabazz and Council. I want to thank you all for pushing forward this legislation. I'm happy it's passed, and this, of course, is a win for everyone. I do want to give some credit to the council members who were willing to prioritize the lives of the people within the city, regardless of the cost. Their efforts have seemed to be critiqued during this meeting, and as a taxpayer, I would have been happy to pay more taxes regardless, because it's not really fair to put a price tag on people's lives and the urgency we need to reform police brutality within our city. So with that, thank you all for being aligned on this and for understanding the importance of being able to hold our law enforcement and local politicians accountable.
Thank you. Marquis Hall. Mr. Hall. Mr. Hall.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
I'm sorry. Thank you guys for passing this much needed legislation. I'm hoping that Bash is still on the line, Trippy's still on the line. Everybody that has worked to pass this legislation to make sure that we have accountability and transparency. There's so many lives that have been altered, not just lost, but altered forever. Young men that have been shot, that were shot by officers, and they have another story besides what it is that the officers said. And of course, their story doesn't get heard, it doesn't get believed. We need to count on a camera from Pete's Pizza or a camera from a cell phone that somebody's holding. We need to count on the video from somewhere else. So these body cameras being on the police, they do matter because they lead to transparency, they lead to accountability, they lead to justice. And without that video, there's really no hope for it. So that's why I felt that we needed it no matter what, no matter if it was the community that was going to pay for tax dollars or a grant. And I'm glad that the grant was received from the federal government. The word austerity is thrown around. Well, I don't know if it's thrown around too much, but the money's not infinite. We recognize that, but there's money being used for other things. There's money being used to pay banks that shouldn't be used to pay banks coming from the community when people borrow money to do jobs that they're not doing. They really steal money, like the Wilmington Housing Partnership steals $3 million and the community has to pay it back instead of that money going towards programs that might stop somebody from being out in the street doing what it is that they don't need to be doing, or
30
a
seconds.
body camera being put on a police officer that needs to have a body camera on because he's doing something that he shouldn't be doing, or she. We need for there to be transparency at any cost, and I'm thankful that you guys were able to put this forth. And let me be really transparent and let me make sure that everybody's held accountable. Chris Johnson and Bud FREEL and Hanifa Shabazz voted against body cameras being put on these police officers early. It should have been, we should have been had this, but they voted against it because it wasn't ready. Chris Johnson's exact words, it wasn't ready.
Your time, sir. Christina K.
Thank you. So I guess I have a question on this one. There's still been no word on what accountability will be attached to this, in terms of, you know, if or when the cameras will be on, when this program will actually be implemented, if there's an FOP commitment, which we previously were told to expect in writing, but haven't seen. I don't know. Those are my questions on that. Where are the commitments?
This is a comment period, ma'am, so we don't go back and forth with questions. And so if there's no more other comments from members of the public, I would go to the council, and seeing none, Councilman Turner.
Thank you, Madam President. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Thank you, Madam President. You know, and this is legislation that we've been fighting for a while, me and Councilman Congo. So I thank my colleague, Councilman Guy, for commending us for being in the fight for this. But it also, you know, I hear everybody giving praise on this one, but then we want to talk facts, and we don't speak the facts. The facts were that Councilman Bud FREEL didn't work with me and Councilman Congo with this legislation, and took it on by itself. And it wasn't that we didn't want to wait on the grant. The first time we applied, the Public Safety Committee and the police chief put the grant in too late the first time, so we had to wait a whole year, and that's why we got to this point. So if we're going to speak facts, as Councilman Johnson spoke about, then we had to tell it all, that we got the last time in we got our application in too late. So, you know, I understand we give them praise on different legislation, but facts are facts. And, you know, I'm glad that our city will get this. But there are some unanswered questions. Yes, we do got 600,000. But the last time that we checked, the estimated was 1.8 million for us to get 315 cameras for all of the police departments. So I hope that every police officer will have a camera, and I hope there will be consequences for if they don't have it turned on as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Councilwoman Harley.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to make sure that I'm added on this legislation as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnston.
Again, revisionist history is very rampant in this council, recreating the past. But, you know, we have to move forward. And, you know, I think we have to look at this pragmatically, is that, you know, this is a good step forward. But honestly, I sit here, I'm excited about it, but I wish there was a grant, you know, for more crisis intervention workers or first responders to deal with the mental health crises that we have. I wish those federal dollars were available, and maybe they will be. So, you know, I'm very excited about this, but we have to look forward to that there's a lot more to do. And in terms of what's going to happen to hold the police accountable, you know, the chairwoman of public safety and I will continue to work and stay on the police department. In fact, you know, I had the experience of writing the regulations for the pilot program regulations years ago. So, you know, if you look back in history, you know, no one is just allowing officers that have body cameras to just do what they want. And I do believe the regulations need to be vetted. I have not seen the latest ones, but trust me, as soon as I get them, I will share them with my colleagues way before it goes to committee, so we can make sure that we have a tight regulation that holds the police accountable, and it's in line with everything else that we're doing in council. So I just wanted to clear up that misconception that, you know, folks are, you know, we're going to allow the police officers to do what they want, because this is why this is so important, along with the other reform measures we're currently working on.
Councilman Guy. Councilman Guy. One more time, Councilman Guy.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, what I want everybody in the public to do when you get a chance is I want you to Google body worn camera policy. Just Google that phrase. And what you'll understand when you Google that, you'll understand why for a whole year they have withheld from all of us members of council the draft policy. Because now that we got the money in place and ready to make the purchase, you'll notice that the first two things that they told us were blocking us are still in place. So there's still more work to do, but for a year, nobody's shown us any kind of documents related to efforts to reach an agreement with the union, and nobody's shown us a draft policy. Now, you heard one councilman just say that he was involved with the policy several years ago. Now, he's vice chair of public safety. That has never been shared with all of the members of council. So what we got people doing is holding information, the police department and council members holding it from council, because here's what they don't want to have happen. When you get to the issue of policy, when you all Google that phrase, what you'll realize is that one of the biggest fights that people have is what are the details are going to be? What are they going to be for storage? Is my time up?
No, it's not, but you're out of order and you're using up your time. It's in reference to the contract, not the policies of its use.
I'm not the one who brought up the contract first. So you didn't say anything to anybody else. You just can't stand to hear the truth. I'm talking about the topic.
I have no problem with it. When I hear
You
it,
have a problem with the truth.
probably out of order.
So I should have my 5 minutes, but I'm not talking what you want to hear.
We're
Haven't
talking
you?
about the contract.
I'm talking about it because the contract is part of what we're voting on. Somebody might not vote on it because there's no contract, but I'm talking about the policies, how you use these cameras.
But the
And
policy
that's relevant to whether you want to buy them or not.
is not, this is about
So you just only want to hear what you want to say.
well, I can't because I'm the president, sir, and I say
No, you can't. No, you can't because you're the president. You're supposed to be an honest and fair person and let each person have their 5 minutes.
It works when you want to do it, sir.
If you would just learn to let each person have their 5 minutes,
20-046.
that's all you need to do. So part of whether a person votes for this is their concern about things related to it. And you know this, but you're just doing what they make you do.
Okay, I'm doing it well, ain't I? Okay.
Go ahead. No, you're doing it terribly.
I'm doing it well.
Right.
Your time
So
is
you talked more during my 5 minutes than I did. Jim Baker just knew let people have their 5 minutes and then go to the next person.
My name is Hanifa Shabazz.
And that's why your name is Hanifa Shabazz, because you don't want to let other people have their say.
And your time is ticking.
That's right. So go ahead. You want to use the rest of it? So watch what happens, everybody, once we all get to see the policy. Their object is to implement it without it being able to be looked at by everybody. So just Google what I said so that you can learn, because it matters who can look at it. Some places the public can see what's captured by the cameras. Some places they can't. This is going to matter. So I'm voting for this, but the game ain't over yet. We got some more details that haven't been addressed, and they're trying to do it in secrecy. That's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Guy. Seeing no more comments, Mr. FREEL, closing comments, please.
Oh, thank you, Madam President. Normally, I don't respond to some of the ridiculous speeches that I hear during comment period, but I think I have to here a little bit. And the one speaker always kind of, the way he speaks is that he knows all, and we have to learn from him. If that was the case, only an administration can negotiate and present a contract. Council cannot do it on their own. So the administration negotiated this contract. They asked me if I'd sponsor it. I said, yes, I would. So that's why it's here tonight. We seem to have council members believe that they can make speeches and go on Facebook, and that's the work of getting something done, but it's not. I spend a lot of time in between meetings talking to the administration. I'm sure Chief Tracy is tired of hearing from me about the damn grant and was it we hear yet or didn't hear. But that's what goes into making things happen, not just making speeches or introducing legislation and then not doing any of the follow-up. So that's how I came about having this bill. I'm glad to have it. It doesn't help me one way or the other. I'm gone in a couple of months. I'm just trying to get the job done and move forward. I'm glad that we received the grant today. I commend the police department, Chief Tracy, Inspector Ash, and his team for the work they've done. But tonight we're going to go ahead and hopefully approve this contract so we can go ahead and buy these cameras and move forward. That's all I have. Thank you.
Right, and I might understand one other fact I would like to clarify, that it was not, they did not put it in late. It was the first time we applied, we did not get it. And so we applied the second time. With that, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Oliver,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harley,
Yes.
Councilman Turner,
Yes.
Councilwoman McCoy,
Yes.
Councilman Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman FREEL,
Yes.
Councilwoman Dixon,
Yes.
Councilman Guy,
Yes.
Councilwoman Walsh,
Yes.
President Shabazz.
Yes,
11 yeas and 1 absent.
declared adopted.
Ordinance 20-048, Agenda 4869, an ordinance to authorize and approve an agreement between the City of Wilmington and Pimentus Corporation for an online payment processing and bill presentment system, contract 21017 DFPS.
First reading of the ordinance.
An ordinance to authorize and approve an agreement between the City of Wilmington and Pimentus Corporation for an online payment processing and bill presentment system, contract 21017 DFPS.
Second reading of the ordinance.
Madam President, I move that be known as the first and second reading of that ordinance referred to the Finance and Economic Development Committee.
Second.
It's been probably moved in second that be known as the first and second reading of that ordinance referred to the Finance and Economic Development Committee.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Johnson, your mic is on. I mean, you're muted. Your mic is muted, Mr. Councilman Johnson.
I'm sorry about that. Yes, Council President. I have a resolution to present.
Resolution 20063, Agenda 4872. Whereas in 1972, the owners of the property situated in a block bounded by 7th Street, 8th
At
Street.
this time, I move for this resolution to be received, recorded, and filed, and adopted by a yea/nay vote.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. The resolution be received, recorded, filed, adopted by yea and nay. Vote on the question.
Okay, this resolution is being presented on behalf of a community developer, Weston Neighborhood House, for their Lifelines community project. It approves the termination of a deed restriction within a declaration recorded within the Newcastle County Recorder of Deeds. So it's a simple zoning approval that has to go through council.
Seeing no comments from members of council, are there any comments from the public? Ms. Sarah Lester? Ms. Lester?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President, Councilman Johnson, and Council. I'm Sarah Lester. I'm President and CEO of Cornerstone West CDC, and I'm here actually tonight with our Housing Director, Paul Calistro, who's also on the line. Thank you for considering this resolution on such short notice. The deed restriction and necessity of council to approve its removal was brought to our attention late in the development process for the Lifelines 3 affordable housing development project, which will build housing for youth aging out of foster care, including the first ADA compliant unit. It is very important and urgent that this deed restriction is removed so that we can meet our financing obligations and begin construction for these much needed housing units. We hope that you will recognize the administrative nature of this issue and pass the resolution this evening. Thank you for your continued support of our work and supporting of this project. Thanks again for your consideration.
Okay, back to council. Councilman Harlan.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to say that I want to commend the West End Neighborhood House, Paul Calistro, Sarah, and their entire staff for the work that they're doing as it relates to affordable housing, and especially for those individuals that are aging out of foster care. This is the type of work that we definitely want to be in support of, those that really need our support as it relates to housing, as it relates to special needs. So I really appreciate them reaching out and explaining, Paul, that is, explaining the whole intent of this legislation. And I am happy tonight to be in support of this legislation. And again, thank you for improving the quality of life for those that need our help the most. Thank you, Council President.
Councilmember Gray.
Madam President, I would also like to compliment them on this project to help foster kids and people who are underserviced in our community. But can you tell me specifically what deed restriction we're voting to remove? It gives the book and the page number, but I didn't read that. Are they still on the line, Weston, or are they still online?
Councilman Johnson, do you have that answer?
I do not, frankly, Councilwoman Gray, but I believe Sarah Lester should have that info because it was provided by their lawyer.
I mean, I don't want a long drawn out
Council
detail. I just
President.
want to know. I thought they were still online.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I believe that in the resolution, there's the declaration is attached, and it's a declaration that just stated at the time in 1972 that the property could be used as commercial, but then they never proceeded to actually use this particular property as commercial. It remained residential, and it is zoned residential today. So all zoning is compliant. It is just that in the declaration itself, it stated, I think in point 3, that council had to, if there was any changes, council had to be passed through council. So it's just an administrative detail in that 3rd point.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. I also wanted to just thank Sarah Lester, Paul Calistro, Cornerstone West, CDC, for making certain that I got a call as well to give me a little bit more insight, explanation about what the resolution was for. Also, thank you for that, making certain that you serve that underserved population. I do believe that West A Neighborhood House, Cornerstone West, is actually the first to actually put together housing for our youth who are aging out of foster care in the state. I don't know whether or not they're still the only ones, but I know that they were the first. So I just congratulate them on still moving forward when it comes to that agenda. So thank you so much for all of the help that you're doing for our kids here.
Councilwoman Oliver.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to echo what Councilman McCoy said about Paul reaching out, making contact with me, explaining the whole situation. And I also would like to give kudos for the affordable housing. I won't say how many years ago that myself and Councilwoman McCoy worked up there, and she worked for Cornerstone West. But I wanted to thank Paul and all his staff for reaching out to me, explaining everything, and keep up your work with affordable housing and special needs and foster care. Congratulations.
Councilmember Guy.
Yes, Madam President. I believe when I was going through the material that this was a property where the deed restriction restricted the use for hospital purposes only. And so when there was the question of like, what is this for? Well, that restriction is, I believe, what's in their way. And so they got to come to city council to get a document lifting that deed restriction. That was the agreement back when it was put in place. So that's essentially what we're doing. We're lifting that deed restriction that says hospital purposes only. That's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilwoman Harley.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to be added as a co-sponsor. This is definitely a good piece of legislation for a good purpose. Thank you.
Great. And I want to thank the council members for understanding the change of process in this for this important piece of legislation, that it came right to the council, but because of the importance of it and what it does for the city of Wilmington, we felt it was important that we make I used my presidential privilege to put it on the agenda immediately so that it can go through and they can meet their timeline. There would not be any questions about their necessary funding, and that this process would be able to take place. So thank you, council members, and glad that you were receptive to the conversation by Mr. Callisto as recommended to discuss with you to approve this legislation. Councilmember Turner.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, and I like to commend you for that as well, Madam President, for putting this legislation on the agenda, knowing the sense of urgency for that project to be completed. I hope you also do that with the vacancy of the 2nd district, and also with the Councilman Guy's pre-rental inspection legislation. So hopefully you do that as well. You can put that on the next council meeting. I think that's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson, closing remarks.
Just want to thank everyone for especially being under the gun, for working with us. This is the best of what council can do. You know, this is how we're supposed to work. So I appreciate the teamwork and working with Westside on making sure this project can start because it's scheduled to break ground in a few weeks. So thank you very much. And at this time, I ask for a roll call.
Clerk will call the roll.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Oliver,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harley,
Yes.
Councilman Turner,
Yes.
Councilwoman McCoy,
Yes.
Councilman Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman FREEL,
Yes.
Councilwoman Dixon,
Yes.
Councilman Guy,
Yes.
Councilwoman Walsh,
Yes.
President Shabazz.
Yes,
11 yeas and 1 absent.
declared adopted.
And that's all I have tonight, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilmember McCoy, legislation tonight.
Nothing tonight, Madam President.
Councilmember Turner, legislation tonight.
Nothing tonight, Madam President, and can I be excused? Madam
Yes.
President,
Yes.
thank you.
Councilmember Harley, legislation.
Nothing tonight, Council President. Thank you.
Councilmember Oliver, legislation.
Yes, Madam President. I have an ordinance to present and call for first and second reading.
Ordinance 20049, Agenda 4868. An ordinance to approve the removal of a portion of Palmer's Row located between New Street and the northern boundaries of tax parcel number 26029 10-124 from the official city map.
First reading of the ordinance.
An ordinance to approve the removal of a portion of Palmer's Row located between New Street and the northern boundary of tax parcel number 26029 10124 from the official city map.
Second reading of ordinance.
Madam President, I move this be known for the first and second reading of the ordinance and refer to the Community Development Urban Planning Committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and second up, the first and second reading of the ordinance to refer to Community Development Urban Planning Committee.
That will be all, Madam President.
Councilwoman Gray, any legislation tonight?
None tonight, Madam President.
We're now going to petitions and communication. Councilwoman Walsh.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have 2 comments that I need to make. With social media, things are just crazy because news goes through over devices within seconds, and it doesn't matter if it's the truth or not the truth, it just does. And whether we're having a council meeting in council chambers or by Zoom, people just constantly send you text in the middle of these meetings. And tonight, like many other nights in the last 3.5 years, I kept getting texts from people saying, you can't let Sam Guy get away with that. You can't allow him to be calling all of you racial names and for the angst he has caused in our city by trying to put racial walls between neighborhoods and sections of our city. I think those who know me even a little bit know that I've actually calmed down about him somewhat, but I am not going to let him get away with this, so that if you do end up seeing anything in newscast, you're going to know I forewarned him and am forewarning residents of the city that I'm not going to take his behavior down. He has done nothing but spread hate throughout our city for the last 3.5 years. The second thing that I heard several times tonight, I'd like to get straight. We all take the same oath of office when we take this job. Part of that oath is to uphold the codes for the city, the county, the state, the federal government. And I keep hearing that an excuse after excuse as to why the second seat is vacant right now. And somehow it's your fault, number one, because you didn't do anything. You didn't move anywhere. You didn't falsely put an address down. And my point is, I took an oath of office to uphold those codes. I did not take an oath of office to uphold Trippy Congo. That was his job. And I did mine. Whether it was easy to do, which it wasn't, but we can't allow these votes to be personal. And the oath that we take is for the people, not for our friends, not for our colleagues. It's for the people. And I lived up to my oath. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Guy?
Yes, it's beautiful what was just stated, because I too get a whole lot of text messages about the racist activity of yourself and how you basically tell the president how to rule against whatever's being discussed when you can get away with it. And so people notice that kind of stuff as well. Now, luckily, I've been on the earth long enough fighting for civil rights that I know what I'm dealing with. And it ain't nothing new. And back in the day, they would hang Black people that didn't just do what master said to do. And if you could, you'd probably like it to be back the way things used to be. But it's not like that. And the reason why there's so much suffering in my community is because people all over the state and the county and everywhere else want to dictate what happens in Wilmington and put their money on the table. And Democrats and Republicans work together to disenfranchise Black people. Okay? So it's kind of like on election day. The Democrats in Delaware tell Black people not to vote on primary day. They do no get out the vote activity. But when November gets here, all they do is spend money trying to get Black people to come vote for the Democratic Party ticket. That's how white supremacy works in Delaware. So you benefit from it. Bud does. And I'm saying, and you guys have made careers doing it. But that aside, that's just kind of how the game works. And so I think that you got people that like what you do, and I got people who like what I do. And so everybody's got their role. But I'm not just allowing people, that's why I'm the watchman, to just be disregarding the community. And Black folk and white folk know when there's a fight, you'll find me on the side of what's righteous. So that's where I try to make sure that I am, but I'm not letting you exploit people. I'm not the Black guy that you're gonna say and make all these speeches to try to make me feel bad about standing up and protecting the people who's hurting. That game then played out. So, you know, I'm happy for you getting all your text messages, and I probably know who most of them are from because your Facebook is public and people see all of that kind of information and what folks say when they think nobody's looking, because some of the people in your group share stuff with people out of your group. So that's just something to keep in mind. So at the end of the day, Wilmington can be a wonderful place for everybody. But right now, Wilmington is a place where there's certain money interests that want to make it a better place for only certain people and want to tell other folk they got to get out. But that's not going to work. That's been going on for years and it is not going to work. So when this next council comes in, these bills like the one that got voted down, this can no longer be a white supremacy party of folks getting together and putting together a piece of legislation designed to harm people who are already hurting. Because there's white people that also are harmed by this oppressive way of operating here in Wilmington. So I hope the next crew has an opportunity to have say, because the most important thing that I've noticed is that you, Councilwoman,
20 seconds.
and your buddy, the president, both of you, the only thing you all really know how to do is try to keep other people from communicating. That's what you guys always do. That's your last move. That's all I had.
Councilwoman Dixon.
Thank you, Madam President. There's a virtual women's wellness and breast health survivorship on Saturday, October 17th from 8 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. You can register on Christiana Care's website. There's also a blanket and coat drive that is in 2 locations in the city. Drop-off locations will be on Saturday, October 24th, 76ers Fieldhouse at 9:30 a.m. till 10:30 a.m. And then PS DuPont School, it'll be from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. So I just wanted to thank those locations within the city for being able to be locations for people to do collections. We will not be giving out those items that day. They will be just for collection, and then there'll be another day for giving out those items. And then my last thing is I just wanted to thank the organizations who continuously have been fighting for the lives of our children and adults regarding violence in the city of Wilmington. One life lost is always too many, and we have to show the behavior of us reflects on our children and other individuals within our communities. If we show them the right way of doing things, ultimately they do that as well. And ultimately there has to be trust that's built back within our young people. So I look forward to working and continuously fighting with our organizations who are working on those efforts throughout our city. Thank you.
Councilmember FREEL.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I just want to announce that we're having one of our household hazardous waste events this Saturday, the 17th at Frawley Stadium from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. We collect hazardous waste, we collect electronics for recycling, and we do shredding of paper. Hopefully council members saw the flyer that was sent out to them. I do want to thank the council members that supported me tonight with the housing legislation. I greatly appreciate it. I know it was a vote for you with all the misinformation out there, but I appreciate your support. I normally don't make comments in reference to my colleague, Mr. Guy, but you know, I feel like I have to when he constantly calls me a white supremacist and other names. And I'm not getting a lot of texts.
Well, could everyone mute your phone, please? Could you mute your phone?
Thank
Everyone else, please. Thank you. Sorry, Councilor FREEL.
You know, I have served under 4 different mayors, Mayor Sills, Mayor Baker, Mayor Williams, and Mayor Brzezicki. I've served under 5 different presidents of council. President Baker, President Blunt, President Griffiths, President Gregory, and now you, President Boggs. I don't have to tell people what color the different mayors and presidents were. But I will say that I don't think there's ever been a time that I disrespected any of those individuals in the positions that they served. I represented the city for 16 years, the entire city, and I went to meetings all over the city to try to help people with issues that they might have, to do housing projects, cleanup projects, beautification projects, whatever it took. I was willing to help out. So to have a council member imply that I don't care about people, or I don't care about certain people, is so far from the truth It's unbelievable. I mean, I constantly try to work with people and bring people together. This council member reminds me very much of the individual who sits in the White House today. He can only try to hold his power by separating and dividing people and calling people names, because he's a very insecure individual. And that's something that he's going to have to deal with. But if he thinks he's helping people and helping this city move forward by his rhetoric and his actions, he's wrong. I mean, he's holding us back. And we do have a lot of work to do and progress to make, but he is not helping the matter. We need leaders who are going to try to work with people, bring people together, and come up with solutions, not just rhetoric, screaming and complaining about people and calling them names. So I do hope the next council is different. Believe me, I do. I hope they get a lot accomplished. I hope somebody picks up the housing legislation and makes it work, because we need good leadership. We need leadership that's going to kind of work together. And I thank you for that time. It's not something I often do, but I felt I had to say that tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman FREEL. Councilman Johnson?
Yes, I just do wanted to follow up on the one issue regarding race. And I think it's important for the public to understand that, again, racism is serious, and it's the foundation and bedrock of this country. And, you know, we really have to be careful about when we scream racism, because there are serious causes of racism. If you look at our education system, housing, mass incarceration, there's a litany of ways. And we sit up here with privilege and talk about racism, but as a legislator, we are subjected to it. We are Black, but we have something, we have at least a voice of reason and voice of power in the city. That's all I want to just hopefully, you know, I just encourage my colleagues to, again, use decorum and really call out racism when it matters, but don't call it racism just because somebody disagrees or sees a piece of legislation differently. So I just want to leave everyone with that. But to kind of go towards what more salient matters right now, we do have a lot going on as we approach winter. We have the Winterize program that was officially announced by the Committee of 100, Delaware Restaurant Association, and working in conjunction with Newcastle County. It's over $300,000 in grants for our small businesses and restaurants to winterize. I can't underscore how important that is as we continue to help our small businesses. You all know I talk about this a lot because it is a focus of mine, working on economic development of small businesses, and we must make sure these folks apply for the grants. It's up to $5,000 in grants that can be used for heaters, tents, helping to winterize. So please, 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 and spread the word, because we have to make sure the resources get to our community. And last but not least, on October 28th, we do have the close of Curbside Wednesday on the Union Street West Side corridor. It's been a great event that's taken place every week since September. It's using, again, outdoor dining that's socially distant and safe, and it's been a hit so far. And in fact, you know, we look forward to doing it in spring. But the 28th will be the kind of the grand finale. Please support our small businesses. As winter approaches, we must make sure they survive, so we continue to provide jobs and resources for our communities. Thank you.
Councilmember McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. I basically only have really one thing to announce this evening. I just wanted to make the people in the area, the 6th district, know that we are doing another cleanup. We had just previously did one right after the primary on Lancaster Avenue and 2nd Street, and now this one is going to be on Maryland Avenue. So on Maryland Avenue on October 31st, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., we will be doing the cleanup. It will, the staging area where you can go get your supplies will be the Pulaski Triangle on Maryland Avenue. We will be cleaning up Maryland Avenue from pretty much like Linden Street area, right where underneath the underpass for 95, all the way up to across from like the Canby Park Shopping Center. We have been partnered up with a few Cleveland Heights Estates, Hedgeville Civic Association, Browntown Civic Association, many reps, our Representative Mitchell, Representative Dorsey Walker, Representative Bolden, and our Senator Elizabeth Lockman. She has coordinated this, and we wanted to make certain that everyone gets a chance to come out, volunteer. We've heard what you stated, and you want to make certain that your corridor stays clean. So this is the second planned cleanup. So I do hope that you'll be able to participate. I actually do want to state one other thing. I did get a text as well talking about my statement and my apology and why am I apologizing. And I apologize on my portion because I did not complete my mission. And I just want to make certain that people are aware that our politicians we're supposed to be public servants, and we're here to do a job for you. I did not blame anybody or anything about the fact that I missed the mark, and I should have kept pushing forward, but I actually relaxed because I thought that this was going to be done for me so that I can go ahead and move on to something else. And so I just wanted to state, to everyone that this was the reason why I made that apology, and know that I'm actually working for you. And if I was wrong and if I had missed the mark, then I'm going to let you know that I did. So that I just wanted to make certain that people had that understanding on the reason and the comment that I made about the blight bill. Thank you.
Councilmember Harlan.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to say to Council Member McCoy, I think that is being a big person and definitely demonstrates great leadership when you own up to when you miss the mark, because we're all of us are human and we don't always, hit the mark, but it takes a big person to acknowledge, when they miss the mark. So I commend you for that. But as it relates to my announcement, I just want to remind the community leaders within the in the 4th District that received an email from me regarding the 4th District Community Task Force. I sent out emails letting them know that they need to respond regarding their 3 top priorities that we're going to be working on for the next term. I'm going to be working from the ground up in terms of what each community in the 4th District would they see as a priority, and to recommend 1 to 2 individuals from their community to work with me on their priorities. So I want to remind them that they can send that information to me, and we're going to get started in January. Different individuals needed more time to get the information out to their communities to make sure that they were getting buy-in from their communities in terms of what the priorities are for their communities, be it Southbridge, the riverfront, downtown, east side, midtown, Trinity, and the slither of West Center City. So please email me your top 3 priorities so we can get together and have the representation so we can work on what you deem as a priority, in addition to some of the ideals and initiatives that I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. First, I would like to thank everybody in the 3rd District for a positive meeting we had last week on the east side and on the north side pertaining to some of the vacant properties and trying to clean up certain areas. Secondly, we have COVID, there's COVID free testing at the Northeast area. Monday through Friday, I receive a lot of calls, even though we put out information and Newcastle County has, but I have received a lot of calls. So there's free testing at the Northeast area, Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 4. You can walk in there. And Kingswood, free testing. You can walk in there Monday through Friday. I think that's 10 to 4. That's one thing. Secondly, I would like to thank Jessica and the staff, Newcastle County, for the outstanding job they did for the last census push. State Representative Cook with the hands, what was that, Hands Out Newcastle? It was all on the flyer. I can't remember the exact name of what that was out there. But I know the event that occurred in Price's Park with the help of Bud FREEL and several other volunteers, it was very successful. and it was a beautiful day that day. So I'd like to thank all the volunteers for coming out in Price's Park with that event. Thirdly, I would like to mention that Black on Black crime should matter to Black people. I've been putting in a lot of resolutions. I won't call names of individuals, family, because I think that's very sensitive just to call out people's names. But it's sad what's going on in the city of Wilmington with our youth. I mean, I know a lot of the family members, and you know, we get out there in March and we talk about a lot of issues, and all of them are relevant. But I think Black on Black crime should be relevant to us also. We should care enough about each other to not be killing each other. Like water, it's an epidemic, it's sad. So my heart goes out to a lot of, you know, all the families who are involved with a lot of this killing that's occurring in the city of Wilmington. Lastly, no, not lastly, one more thing. I'd like to congratulate Yvonne today for her opening at the Old Lacey's. I thought that was very nice. Very good friend of the whole families, and that was a very beautiful opening, a soft opening at Lacey's with Yvonne. Kudos to her. And lastly, we need to, and this is last, we need to vote like our lives depend on it for November the 3rd. We need to vote like our lives depend on it on November the 3rd. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gregg.
Thank you, Madam President. I really am just going to repeat what some of the previous council people have said. Councilwoman Oliver, her kudos for encouraging people to vote. I tried to do that before on November 3rd. I also, my heart goes out to all the crime and the murders among Black people. And one of the main things that I hear is that these kids, these young adults, don't have hope. So we have to find some kind of way to give them hope. We have to look down in our hearts or look out to families. And there are a lot of reasons they don't have hope, but they need hope so that they'll want to live longer and not to kill each other. Also, COVID is coming back. We're going into the winter season, so this is like a broken record. But please continue to wear your mask, wash your hands, stay away from crowds. That's all we can do, and pray and hope. Thank you.
Thank you. I just would like to say that it's been a really honored to be part of the legislative branch of government for the city of Wilmington for 16 years. And during that time, I've learned so much about the charter, council rules, Robert's Rules of Order, and that when conducting this business, that I know that it's important to live up to the oath that I've taken over the years in using and complying with those rules as we conduct the business. If I'm in another organization, I follow the bylaws of that organization. If I'm just dealing with family, even family got rules of how we are to conduct ourselves. So I hear, the different accusations as to who controls me and what goes on. I just want the public, I'm not speaking to members of council because your comments really, is what your comments are. I just want the public to know that the job, from my perspective, of the city council is to maintain that oath that we put our hands on. The Bible will affirm that we would conduct the business of the city and we would adhere to the charter, the city rules, Robert's Rules of Order, in handling that business. So I take great pride in conducting business in that manner. And when we talk about historically, we had 9 Black members of council. First time in history that had that many people of color represent a majority population of the city, to have that kind of power to make change for the people that we know have been disenfranchised, that are suffering from systemic racism, that we could make policy changes. But as you saw, most of our argument wasn't about how we could make economic opportunities, how we could address education. Our argument is always about a personal perception of one's thinking about someone else. And I know that we all, that CDC report said that we all suffer from trauma. So us adults are not excused from it. That is not just happening with our children. So if we really was so hell-bent on Black Lives Matter and changing the inequities and the disenfranchisement within our city, then we non-Black with the power. And I mean, a reason I'm telling you public, I'm referencing the number of 9, is because 9 has veto power. So we thought that this white mayor was doing something against us. We had the power to override him, but we could not go past our personal issues and come together and do what we are all barking about is a problem with our community, and use that collective power to make change for the people we are supposed to represent. So I hope the next council comes in and the council members coming back, that you really study that charter, that you study the Constitution, you study the city council rules and Robert's Rules of Order of how to conduct the business of this city within the law as a legislative body, and make those life changes that you profess that you are the watchman for. And that you're so much on the mark, but you got to know what the mark is before you can make the mark. With that, I accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Adjourn. Good night.
Thank you.